both in the Chumash part and what we'll do later on in Halacha. So it's a Sfiras Omer day, and I can't talk about all the Sfiras Omer, but I want to take a quick look at the Chumash. I want to show you one thing in the Ramban. It's a piece in the Ramban that people kind of slip over, even if they study Ramban, because Ramban's comment is cryptic. The reason Ramban's comment is cryptic is because it's a Kabbalistic comment, and because he says it in other places as well, where most of the places where he says it throughout his commentary is almost just as cryptic. But just let's see what actually is going on with Sfiras Omer, bringing of the Omer and Sfiras Omer, and then I'm just going to do that one Ramban, and then I'm going to go over to take a look at a Nesivos Shalom, which talks about what the counting of the Omer really is. But to understand in Nesivos Shalom, we need to look at what the Psukim are. So let's take first look at the Chumash. Perek Chav Gimel. Thank you. Thank you. Pasuk Tet. Excellent. You guys are helping me along. So it should be page 682 in the Chumash we have. Are we good? There we go. Okay. So in chapter 23 is a listing of holidays. Just actually before you look at Pasuk Tet, the first three Psukim actually talk about Shabbat, right? Which is interesting. Shabbat is placed in amongst the holidays. Shabbat's a different kind of day. It has a different kind of Kedusha. It has a different level of sanctity, but it's almost like trying to compare the two together. And then you have, beginning in Pasuk 4 to Pasuk 5, you have about Pesach. The first month on the 14th day of the month, be in the evening, is going to be Pesach, and then the 15th month is going to be Chag HaMatzot. So you actually, it's interesting, in this Pasuk, on Pasuk 5, the term Pesach, which seems to refer to Erev Pesach. I don't know if people caught that. Term Pesach in the Torah seems to refer to Erev Pesach. The 14th day, and Rabasar Ben Abayim in the afternoon, when they slaughter the Korban Pesach, that's called Pesach. And the actual holiday is called Chag HaMatzot. We used, of course, the term colloquially Chag HaPesach or Pesach for the entire Yontif. And on the first day you can't do Malacha, and on the seventh day you can't do Malacha. Of course, when the diaspora we have the extra days, set first and second, and seventh and eighth. And then before it lists the next holiday, because chapter 23 is an enumeration of the different Yom Tov, and the next holiday after Pesach is going to be Shavuot, Atzeret. The next holiday after Shavuot is going to be Rosh Hashanah. The next holiday after Rosh Hashanah is going to be Yom Kippur. The next holiday after Yom Kippur is going to be Sukkot, and then Shmini Atzeret as well. So in the midst of all of this, you have this part about bringing the Omer and counting Sfiras Omer. So let's just kind of, after you've done 4 to 8, which really talks about Pesach, beginning in verse 9. So just,
can I just ask a question before we go on? Now, when it says about give you and you shall bring an omer from your first harvest.
I'm going to read that yet. Yeah, we haven't read that yet.
Where's this? Okay.
I haven't explained it. Okay, so hang on. So in other words, we're up to about to read 9, and we have to read it through because some of the phrases are a little strange. As you are, right? You're actually probably going to answer questions. So any questions before verse 9?
No.
Okay, good. So in all of this, once again, I told you this is the exception because all the pieces in chapter 23 are about the holiday, some about the sacrifice for the holiday, but they all deal with the different holidays. Shabbat, Pesach, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shmini Atzeres. And in fact, chapter 23 is one of the lanings usually during each of the holidays, because on the Yom Tovim, we read Kriyas Torah that relates to Yom Tovim, so this is one of the ones that comes up multiple times during the year when it's read on each of the Yom Tovim. It's read on Sukkot, and it's read on Pesach. It's not read on Shavuot, there aren't enough days to do it, and it's not read on Rosh Hashanah, it's not read, of course, on Yom Kippur. So verse 9, so Hashem says to Moshe, saying, after talking about Pesach, speak to the Rabbi Israel, speak to the children of say to them, Ki tavo el haaretz, when you come to the land, which land of Israel, of course, Ashani noten lachem, which I'm going to give you. Interesting, it doesn't call it Israel. It identifies the land I will give to you, because making it very clear the purpose of getting Israel is not just a random land, it is the land that God gave to us. Uksartemet ksira, you're going to reap the harvest. And what are you going to do? Vavetemet omer rishis kitzirchem el hakohen. You're going to bring an omer. An omer is a measure of grain from your first harvest to the Kohen, and you take it to the Beit Mikdash or to the Mishkan, well, not the Mishkan, the Beit Mikdash or the Mishkan, which was in Shiloh or Nov or wherever the Mishkan was rotating in Israel. After you've come there, you're going to bring the first omer, and you're going to. And the omer is going to be brought to the Kohen. What does the Kohen do when he takes this first harvest? You take the first harvest, and it hasn't actually told it to us when we're actually going to do this. You're going to bring the fruit to Aveinifet Omer Lefnei Hashem Letzonechem. You're going to wave the Omer, or he will wave the Omer. The Kohen is going to take this Omer of grain, and he's going to wave it. When will this take place? When will he do this waving? You bring the Omer, which is a measure of grain. You bring it to the Kohen.
It's barley, right?
It's barley. Okay, it's barley. It talks about other things in a moment. It's about the barley harvest, so Orim. And you bring it to the Kohen, and what does he do? He takes it and he waves it back and forth.
Okay.
Now, why is he waving it?
Waving it, maybe to get rid of the husks.
No, he's not winnowing it. No, he's actually waving it. He waves it. And you'll see in the moment he waves it back and forth and waves it up down according to Rashi. So he waves it. And when is it going to be done? And he does it before Hashem. So somehow there's some kind of taking this, and the Kohen waves it back and forth, east, west, north, and south, waves it up and down. Somehow there's something...
It's like the lulav.
Right, like the lulav, correct? The lulav is really based the same kind of thing. And why is he waving this? So it doesn't really make it very clear. So the Nesivos Shalom is going to offer a suggestion when we come to it. And when will this happen? So until now we really haven't told you when it happens. We told you historically when it will take place when you come to the land of Israel. Right? That's just giving you a general term. It's not now in the wilderness where you don't harvest because you're getting the manna. When you come to Israel, you settle in and so forth. So then you will do it mimachrat HaShabbos. On the day after Shabbos, Yinifenu HaKohen. What's the day after Shabbat? When it says mimachrat HaShabbat in Pasuk 11. So it says machrat HaShabbat, you would normally translate day after Shabbat on a Sunday. Yinifenu HaKohen. However, our tradition says that whenever this comes up at this point, and this is going to tie into counting the Omer, the same term is going to be used at the Omer the day after Shabbat. It does not mean the day after Shabbat, which is Sunday, but it means Shabbat Beishit, but it means the day after Pesach. So in other words, and the Ramban actually in a piece, I'm not quite sure we'll get a chance to see it because it's a long piece, the Ramban actually says that if there was an argument with the Tzdukim, and later the Karaites, when they would start counting a Sfirat Omer. And you'll see in a moment the counting a Sfirat Omer is the beginning of the day that they would bring the Omer, which is the day after this quote Shabbat unquote. So then the Tzdukim said that Machrat Shabbat is the day after Shabbat, Sunday. The Sunday after the day after Shabbat, you start bringing the Omer to the Beit Mikdash, and you'll see in 5 Psukim, and you start counting the Sfirat Omer. And our tradition is, the tradition is, it's not the day after Shabbat, the Saturday meaning Sunday, it's the day after the Shabbat rest, which is the Yontiv as well. That every Yontiv is really a day of rest, and therefore we count from the second day of Pesach. Just 1 second. The Ramban and Rashi point out that the best proof that it can't be Shabbat, that it can't be talking about Sunday, because what does the Pasuk seem to tell us in Pasuk 10, we just read, that you're going to, when you come to the land, and you cut down the Omer, you cut your crops down, you take the first of this Omer crop, which is going to be, as we pointed out, it's going to be from barley, it doesn't say that here at this point yet, and you bring it to the Kohen, and when is this going to be done? On the day after Shabbat. Which Shabbat? It could be any Shabbat. You just choose any Sunday in the world. You choose a Sunday there's nothing else going on the calendar. You kind of choose a random Sunday. You choose a Sunday the weather is good. So in other words, if the Torah is giving us basic dates throughout the calendar, and it identifies the bringing of the Omer on the day of Shabbat, it would not make sense to tell us it's simply going to be on a Sunday. We don't know which Sunday. Bring it on a Sunday. What Sunday has no significance. Yom Rishon has no significance. Machrat HaShabbat, the day after Shabbat, has no significance anywhere. So one of the proofs to what the Prushim feel that the counting of the Omer, which is based on the bringing of the Omer, was on the day after Pesach. The second day of Pesach is this pasuk, which seems to really want to tie it into a specific date.
This pasuk of Yidaber Adonai al Moshe Yeres, that one?
Pasuk, the one that follows it, Yud. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, when you come to the land of Israel that I give to you, you're going to cut down the harvest. Yeah, that's pasuk.
So where's the allusion to that comment? Where's the allusion to?
It says on the morrow of the rest day, the Kohen shall wave it. It's at pasuk 11. So you're going to bring the Omer before Hashem. Me bad. It was pasuk 11, not 10. And the Kohen will wave it on the. What will he do with it? He will wave the Omer before Hashem. When will he wave it? When you give it to him? When are you giving it to him? On the morrow of the rest day, the Kohen will wave it. What's the morrow of the rest day? The day after Pesach, which we just had before. You got a comment?
The question. So still, it begs the question: why does the Torah say
למחרת השבת, למחרת פסח.
Excellent. Good question. Hold on to it. Yes.
Yeah. The you in bring the Omer, is it a collective you or is it
So it's
individual?
Excellent. It is actually a collective view that you
One Omer.
One Omer is brought in the Beit Mikdash. Correct. This looks like it should be every person doing it.
Right.
Correct.
So,
But it's done by Beis Din.
and who does it?
So the Beit Din does it. The Beit Din does
One
it.
person from the Beit Din
One the
brings a
Beit Din
bushel
comes
of-
along. That's right. Correct. One person brings the
Okay,
Omer.
that's the question.
Okay, that's a good. It's actually an excellent point. And it is written in the Lashon Rabim in the plural, so that the question really is an important question. I think it's really it's singular because you see parts of it in the continuation are really in the singular as well. Ve'iniv et Omer, the Omer, he will waive it, right? So vasitem biyom anevchem et Omer, and the day that you bring the Omer in verse 12, you're going to also bring a sacrifice. Keves tamei ben shnatol yilal Hashem. You're going to bring together with the sacrifice. You're going to bring a mincha, which is a flour offering, a meal offering. That's brought. Meal, don't think of meal as a meal. Think of meal as flour, ground up flour. So many times you had an animal sacrifice that was accompanied by a meal or a flour offering that was dipped in shemen, Yishel Hashem. This is verse number 13 and verse number 14. That what we're told, "V'lechem v'koli lo tochlu ad etzem hayom hazeh," and until you bring this omer, you can't have the kernels or the plum kernels until this very day. When you bring ad aviachem et korban elokechem, until you bring this korban to Hashem, chukat olam l'dorotechem b'chol mashvotechem. This is a law for you in all your dwelling places. So you have to bring the omer in order to allow the new crop. And in fact, the new crop is not permissible to be eaten until this offering was brought in the Beit Mikdash or until the day has passed. There's a rule today called Chadash. There's a very large discussion whether it applies in the diaspora. It does not apply in the diaspora rabbinically. This because it says B'chol Moshvotechem, which means you cannot eat from the new crop of grain until the Omer sacrifice was brought for the beginning of the harvest. Okay, so that's just a really off part of that. So anyway, the first part of this is somehow you're bringing a korban omer. This is not about counting the omer yet. Counting the omer is going to start in verse number 15. So we have a holiday of Pesach. On the second day of Pesach, the day after Shabbat, and Dan's question we'll have to answer still, why it's the day after Shabbat, not the day after Mochrat Pesach. Why doesn't it say Pesach directly? You bring the omer, and then on the same day, and here's where 15 starts, this is the counting of the omer, or you will count for yourselves, and this is why you see that when the Torah wants you to count, it says it not just usfartem, but everyone is going to count, as opposed to bringing the omer. Doesn't say vavetem etchem. It says you're going to bring it collectively, one omer. But when it comes to counting, everybody counts. Mimachrat Shabbos. From which day do you start counting the omer? The day after of the rest day, the same day we just mentioned before. Miyom avechem ad omar dvacha. The day after we brought the omer that they waved. What are you going to count? Sheva Shabbatot Mimotiyanu. You're going to count 7 full and complete weeks. What does it mean 7 full? 7? Why are they complete weeks? Well, how do you understand that? Well, let me ask you a question. Let's go back. Let's go back a step. What does the Sheva Shabbatot mean? 7 what weeks? 7 weeks. Okay. Tmimot. What's tmimot? What's tamim? Complete. Total. Sometimes it means pure. Right? Pure, total, complete. It's really all interchangeable.
That's the 49 days.
Those are 49 days. It's going to actually read in a moment. But by the way, the term and what Tiyan will be, and then verse 16, just going through the Psukim before we look at the Ramban and then look at the Nesivos Shalom. Ad mimachvat Shabbat Hashviit, until the day after. What is this? Machvat Shabbat Hashviit, until the day after the 7th. How do you translate Shabbat here?
They translate it as week.
As week, correct. As week.
It's like the 7th.
Like the 49.
7 weeks. So just to point out here, and the Ramban notes this, that the term Shabbat is being used slightly differently. In Pasuk 15 and Pasuk 11, the word Shabbat means a rest day. So the day after the rest day, which is Pesach. When it talks about you're going to count 7 weeks until the day after Machrat Shabbat, the day after, it's not the day after the rest day anymore. Now Shabbat means a week. Okay, and because every week has Shabbat, says the Ramban. There's always, every week is going to have a Shabbat. So every Shabbat kind of cycle, so to speak, wherever Shabbat would fall out, doesn't mean you wait till Sunday. It means if the 7 weeks ends on a Wednesday, you've had a week that went from Thursday to Wednesday, including a Shabbat. Tisbruch Hamishim Yom, going back to the Pasuk, you're going to count 50 days. So you're counting 49 days, and on the next day, after the 49th day, the 7th week is over. That's where the 50th days comes from. That's why in the old translations, Shavuot was called Pentecost. Anybody remember seeing that?
Yeah.
Back in the day, they don't see that anymore. Pentecost comes from 50. This was the 50th day. In other words, you count 49 days, and on the 50th, the day after the 7 weeks, is the 50th day. Then you bring another mincha, you bring another meal offering, which is made from wheat flour, and you're going to bring you're going to bring another meal offering that is waved. And this time it doesn't really tell you, just talks about waving. It doesn't say how the Kohen takes it. And what is it? There are shnei esrim sola tiena, and here it makes it very clear that there are 2 esronim of sola. Sola is fine wheat flour. So this is the first time we know that this second offering of meal offering on Shavuot was wheat flour. It's chametz. It's in a chametz. Most of the minchot, most of the flour offerings were actually matzot, and this actually is chametz. Bikurim Lashem. It's the first fruits. How they translate this? It is the first offerings to Hashem. And then there are animals that are brought as well together with it. There are kvasim, and there's par, and there's izim that's brought. And we'll just skip over all the animal sacrifices for us. 18, 19, and verse 20. The Kohen is going to take, once again, he's going to take this for the first breads that are brought from this new wheat flour before Hashem, together with the offerings. And actually, the Talmud talks about how he actually has to put one together on top of the other. Where the bread is on top, I forget how it goes now. I think which is on top. He's holding them together like this. So he's holding both the parts of the animal and parts of the carbon mincha. They waves them, and on that day, you're going to call that day itself Mikra Kodesh Yalachem. It's going to be a holy day. You can't do work on that day, and it's going to be Chukat Olam Moshotem L'Dor Tzechem, which is called what we call the holiday of Shavuot, which is sometimes called Atzeret as well in the Torah and other locations. So we have 2 things going on here. Between Pesach and Shavuot, you bring the carbon omer on the day after Shavuot, on the day after Pesach, and then you start counting 7 full weeks. So far, so good? Okay. So let's take a look at what the Ramban says about Safar Ta. And here we go. The Ramban is, I didn't take off Ramban's. Me bad. Raphael, next to the box. No, next to the box. There you go. Starting to get old, guys. Senior moment. What can I say? Okay, here's a Hebrew one. Here's an English one. Okay, here's another English one. So I think it's 665. I think there's a marker in there. Okay, 65. And the Ramban is on your page. It is chapter 23, verse 15. And if I get a moment, slip it to me, I'll find it. So I'll find my place here. Right, but I want to make sure we're starting the right place. Just give me half a sec, guys. I want to stay on schedule because I really want to do this piece from the Nesivos Shalom. Okay. So there's my page is getting slipping away. Hold on, guys. Okay, I'll tell you where I want to start from. Let me see if I can find it here. I'm going to start from 15. I think it's on the left side of your page, 665. Yep. And in your book here, it is 23. Yeah, good. You shall. Excellent. You guys were good. Okay. Right there where my fingers were. So the Ramban is commenting on the words Usfartem Lochem. So, all right, you ready for this? So Ramban says Usfartem Lochem, when it says you will count. Ramban wants to make it very clear that there's a special mitzvah to count the Omer. It's like Ulekachtem Lochem, that you will take for yourself, which talks about taking the lulav and the etrog. The lulav and the etrog, once again, is a mitzvah for everybody. Some mitzvot you are done communally, like one person can do it for us. Some mitzvot are done by the Beit Din. But these mitzvot, some mitzvot are very specifically for each of us, and we take it together as a congregation. Like if you're davening, everybody takes the lulav, but everybody takes for yourself. Everybody takes their own lulav. Now, what happens if you don't have a lulav? What happened? You borrow, or actually you borrow, but what you really should do, especially on the first day, you get a gift, right? It's a gift, and you return it. So in other words, the person gives it to you that it's yours. In the same way, by the way, that what really we say when you go, if you came to shul and you don't have a talis, right? When you make the bracha on the talis, when you put on talis, it should be your talis. You make the bracha on your talis. What happens if you forgot your talis and you take one from the shul? The assumption is the shul is leaving it there for you to use as your talis and give back at the end. Which means, I suppose, if you walk out with it, they can't send you a bill. Okay, but actually, they could send you a bill. Okay, so but the l'kachtem lachem is the same thing that you're going to they transfer to you for the lulav and etrog. It'll be yours at that time. Today, this is less of an issue. Lulavim prices and etrog prices, especially in Toronto, are available to everybody. At one point, if you lived at the end of the line of the road in the little vinkela in Europe, you may have been lucky if you got one esrog and lulav for the entire town. Right? And even then, they probably were not in really good shape.
By lulav we know lakachtem lachem, but how do we know by talit?
Has to be a beged. Has to be your beged. Has to be your beged.
If I have my beged, then I have to.
If your beged,
how do I know that?
It's a mitzvah to put to be. Myself. It's in your beged. It's your beged. I don't know the psukim. I have to look up the Gemara. It's Masechet Brachot, but it has to be your beged. So now that's you could wear it without saying the bracha for kavod hatzibur. Like when you get an aliyah, for example, if you took a talis from the shul, so you don't make a bracha because we assume that even though I could use it as my talis, when I'm simply putting it on, I'm doing it if, let's say, at mincha, if your shul has, you put a talit, it's the kavod hatzibur.
It makes a difference also if I'm a member there or not. Because if I'm a member, I have a party in it.
Perhaps, maybe, but I think that you would ask, halachically, it would not make a difference. And if you were in arrears and your dues, it wouldn't make a difference either.
Never.
There you go, never. Okay. Well, kachtam lachem shetei sfira lekichala kol echad v'echad. That everybody, for you, you've got to do it yourself. Which means shemneh b'piv v'yaskir cheshbano. That you means you, all of us, each one of us has to count it verbally and has to mention what the number is. So when it says usfartem lachem, you're going to count these 7 weeks as kasher kiblu rabotenu, as the rabbis explained in the Talmud. That it doesn't mean that one person counts, right? But it means to say the term that's used in the Talmud is svartim lachem, shetei sfira lekol echad v'echad. And the same thing is used for sukkah, for lulav, shetei lekicha biyad kol echad v'echad. Everybody should take one. V'im kain, okay, and he says the Ramban that sometimes the term is not used in other types of counting, such as for a zav, or such as for a person who's impure. When it says v'ein kain. And this is not true when it says v'safar lo or v'safar lo by a zav, by a person who has an emission and became tamei from seeing these emissions and has to now count to go back to the Beit Mikdash. There's no special mitzvah that they have to count. Shareim ratzu omdim b'tumatzam. They don't have to count. If a zav can't go into the Beit Mikdash, a person who's impure can't go to Beit Mikdash because they have to wait 7 days. What if they decide they don't want to go to Beit Mikdash? What if they say, look, I'm happy being tamei? There's nothing wrong with being tamei. If you're impure, what does that mean? You just can't go to the temple. What if you say, I'm not going back to the temple for the next 3 months? I don't really care that I'm impure. It's not like it's being impure is not like being treif. It's just you're not in a level of purity to go into places that are sanctified. So there's no mitzvah that a zav or a person who is tamei has to actually count. If they want to become tahar, they have to count. So you could suggest that maybe the same thing is by counting the Omer. If I want to get to Shavuos, if I want to really go back to Beit Mikdash, I should count the Omer. If not, I don't. Says the Ramban, not true. Everybody has to do it. The only for Zav, on the other hand, is Shelo Yishkechuhu. I don't really have to count it. You just have to make sure that I don't forget what the days are. Even counting, I may not even be required to count it aloud. V'chein, and then the Ramban says the similar question comes up regarding with Safar Talacha. This is going to be in next week's parsha, where it talks about counting for the Jubilee, for the Shemitah year, and then counting for the Jubilee year. Is there a mitzvah that you have to actually count? Do we have to count? Does someone have to count? At the beginning of every year, this is the first year of the Shemitah. This is the second year of the Shemitah. This is the 47th year before the Jubilee, the 48th year before the Jubilee. It doesn't mean, once again, it's a different type of counting. It doesn't say Sfartem Lachem. It says even Safartem Lachem by Yovel, Shetisayer b'mitzvah shlo tishkach. Just be careful of the number. Just keep the number in mind. There's no special mitzvah. And in Betart Konim it says V'safartem Lacha. However, in the Medrash it says when it comes to counting the years, that was the Beit Din did do that. And he says the Ramban does it mean that, I'm not quite sure, says the Ramban, when the Medrash says that it looks like you have to count for the years of sabbatical years and the years of the Yovel years, I'm not sure, does it mean that the Yovel, that the Beit Din has to actually count them and count the years, V'shavuot, V'rosh kol shana v'shana, and you have to count every year and every sabbatical cycle at the beginning of every year. U'levarech alehem, and to make the bracha that the Beis Din would get together on the Rosh Hashanah of the beginning of every year and say this is the 6th year of the sabbatical cycle, which is really the 43rd year before the Jubilee year. Or maybe it means that the Beit Din simply just has to keep a record of it, and the Ramban really says, I really don't know what it is. Okay? And then it says, the number of days from the waving of the Omer until the next holiday is going to be K'mispar Hashanim. This is the key line that I'm looking for, so I'm going to read it again slowly. So if the Ramban has told us this mitzvah to count, I'm going to read again from V'hinei. And here, Mispar Hayomim Yomat Nufad Yom Mikra Kodesh. The amount of days counting from the waving of the Omer until Shavuot is the same number of days as there are years, K'mispar Hashanim Mishnot HaYeshmita Ari Yovel, as counting the years until the Jubilee. So there's 49 days to count from the day after Pesach until Shavuot, or until the day before Shavuot, and there's 49 years in a sabbatical year to count from till the next Jubilee. In a sabbatical year, 7. Right, so in the same way, there's 7 weeks, 7 weeks of 7 days, go to 49, go to Shavuos. There's 7 years, 7 cycles of 7 sabbatical years, Shemitah years, that go to the next Jubilee. Okay, now you say, is that random? So the Ramban says, not true. And here's the key line in Ramban. V'yatam bohem echad. How do they translate this in your translation? It talks about making a comparison between 49 days and 49 years. 7 weeks and 7 sabbatical years.
One reason?
It's one reason. It's one reason. And the Ramban doesn't make it very clear what the reason is. But what the Ramban really means, and the Ramban says this in a number of places. In fact, he says it in another Ramban later in the Parsha when he talks about Sukkot and Shemini Atzeres. So that Ramban is really very esoteric. The Ramban believes that the world will last for 49,000 years. In other words, you've heard the world is really going to last for 6,000 years, and on the 7th year, what happens? Yemot Mashiach. The Ramban seems to say, no, the world is going to last for 7 times 7. He says this in a number of places. He has a different way of looking at it. So in other words, if you thought that we're close to the end, according to Ramban, we're much further than we think we are. But the Ramban, for some reason, based upon his sources, feels that the count of the years is really 7 times 7. And then at the end of the 49th year, what's going to happen? Well, what happens every time you get to a 50th year? Or you get to a 7th year on Shabbat? What do we talk about? We say it's like a reset. So the world is either going to start again or move to another kind of situation, such as Yemot Mashiach. But the Ramban feels that this counts. And the Ramban says this in about a dozen places. The world is going to exist for 50,000 years, 49,000 normally, 50,000 years, and then at the end of that, it looks like he says Yit Batel. It's going to be like a reset and start all over again. And it's not quite sure what happens according to Ramban at that point. But therefore the Ramban is saying, and the Ramban actually tries to say that there's 50 levels of Binah. The same way there's 49 levels of impurity, there's 50 levels of wisdom that go up. So each level is counting another day. Each day is counting like another year. Each year is counting another 1,000. So each year that we're counting in the sabbatical year is like 1,000 years, so to speak, moving along. That's the Ramban. Yes.
Ramban says other words besides the commentary on the.
Besides
the commentary on the Torah.
Yes, he has a drush. He has a number of drushot. In the Drush and Koheles, he's much more clear about this. He has a Drush and if you in this.
There are commentaries on different books.
He doesn't have commentaries in different books. There's different books that he writes about on topics. He has something called Shara Gmul, where he talks about Olam Haba. It's a sefer on Olam Haba, Shara Gmul. He has a drasha that he writes on different holidays. He has a long drasha he wrote about Sefer Koheles. It's probably given on Sukkot. A drasha, not a drasha like
What's it called?
It's called the drasha al drasha Kohelet.
Oh.
He has a parish on Ramban has a commentary on the Rambam's Taryag Mitzvot, and somewhere in the Taryag in that commentary, I don't know where, he also makes a reference to this.
Do you know, Moshe, where he gets his information?
So he gets it based upon, he feels that this is a comparison to what the 49 years is all about. And he bases it on certain sources in Kabbalah. I don't know exactly where.
He's a Mekubal.
Yeah, but in other words, in other words, where do we get the 6,000 years from?
He claims he is.
So he feels that this 6,000 years is really not 6,000 years. It's meant to be not doubled up, but 6 times 6 or 7 times 7.
Right.
It's like not a square root, a power of, like 7 to the power of 7.
Does he elaborate on
So which year we are now? Which year?
So I don't know which year we're in. I don't know how to make that jump and say, well, we're year 57, 79. Are we really now 57, 79? Or are we 57, 79 times 7? I think when we count it, we're counting with the assumption that everybody else says there's 6,000 years and Mashiach comes. That's most people say. I'm just pointing out that the Ramban, the key to the Ramban, and here's what the Ramban is saying, if you can break away from the concept of whether it's 7,000 and 49,000, I know it's kind of disconcerting to you because everybody thought we're almost at the end of the race. Right? But it looks like the Ramban says we still got a whole lot far to go. So part of the issue with what the Ramban is really saying is that counting of the Omer, this is the key, the counting of the Omer and the counting of the Shemitah is really meant to be like a template or a microcosm of what the role of the universe is, of what we're trying to do to make things improving ourselves, to raise our levels, to reach closer to the Almighty. So if you just strip away the numbers, which may be hard to do in your mindset because you just heard this, the concept, what he's trying to say is the whole idea of counting is not simply counting from one carbon to another carbon, it's about trying to reach self-improvement in the same way that each of these years, each of these 1,000 years are also representing different levels of Shari Binah. So once again, we're trying to reach different levels of internal wisdom itself.
There is a way to reconcile this. If you look at the Hashem made and destroyed the world so many times,
right.
So maybe we are now in the last iteration.
Correct.
So we are on the last iteration.
Maybe it's the last time around. It could be.
which could still be 50,000 years.
Right. Okay, it could be. Right. The question is our count accurate? Is our count 57, 79 accurate altogether? Where are we really up to? That's a whole different discussion. I'm not sure we can go there. Okay, but in other words, the whole idea of what he's trying to say, therefore, is not by chance that Shavuos the Siras Omer is 49, and Shemitah and Yovel is 49. There's a real purpose to this. And the land of Israel becomes, therefore, every 50 years that you rotate the land and you return the land back to the people, the ancestral land was returned on the Jubilee year, becomes simply a microcosm of what really happens. You work, and then at the end of it, you start all over again. Somehow there's a repetition that will happen after 50,000 years. So in other words, Ramban, and this is, by the way, in line. Remember we learned Sefer Bereshit, we said everything that happened to the Avot is a microcosm of what's going to happen in the future. Basically what he's saying is our world is a microcosm of what's really, our counting Shemitah years, our counting Siras Omer is a microcosm of what will happen in the future of the existence of the world.
According to him, what time is the Matan Torah? Where is the Matan Torah?
Whereas Matan Torah was on the 6th of Sivan.
Yes, but how many years?
How many years? It was when the Torah tells it as what? They came out of Egypt.
Which
when we count Shavuot, we count to Shavuot, we're not counting to Matan Torah, we're counting maybe to our own Matan Torah, our own renewal. Okay?
But which 70? Which 49?
I don't know.
According to
I don't know. But it's a very mysterious kind of comment in the Ramban, and every time he mentions this, he really doesn't go much further. He kind of leaves it like where is this? Where are we? But I thought it was important for you to understand that, at least in the very least, that the whole concept of this count, according to the Ramban, has at least a connection to the existence of the world. So counting that you count every day Sfiras Omer, right? And today is the 26th day of the Omer. You forgot. So it's 33 weeks and 5 days. Then we're counting really in a self-improvement as the world is trying to continue to grow and develop. And part of our job is not just making ourselves better, trying to make the world a better place.
Where does Ramban's comment stand in our acceptance of these numbers? I mean, I have to assume there'd be 101 different sages who would argue this.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. I don't have the answer for that. I think the Ramban may be one of the few who counts it this way. Most they think the dominant position, if you were to look at numbers, is 6,000. Right? No one knows what's really going to happen when you get to 6,000. And you know what? We're close, but we're not that close. God should give us all arichas yomim yishanim, long lives, but we still got over 200 years to get there, and I don't think we can hold out. Something to look forward to when you come back in the second round, or maybe you might be now in the second round. You might be now in your 20th round, right? But I don't want us to, and I've said this, I don't want to get hung up on this kind of concept. I know we are, but I think we have to live each day to make every day significant. And that's maybe the key idea, that our lives are a microcosm of the world. Your counting Sfiras Omer is a microcosm of what the rest of the world is. If you can make your little part of the world better, you've made the world a better place. Everything we do, we try to make an improvement. Even the checkout boy who's checking out at the counter is improving the world, because he's allowing people to get home and process and make whatever they're going to do, which will be better. So even though it's not about being a rocket scientist to get to the moon, it's about even small things can make the world a better place. Saying hello to people makes the world a better place. Right? Doing a mitzvah bein adam l'chaveiro makes the world a better place. Okay, so that's in terms of our Ramban. The rest of the Ramban really is more just detail in terms of counting it. Let's just finish off. Therefore, you're going to count 50 days. You're going to count 49 days, which we call the 50th day of Kadesh. And you're going to sanctify the 50th day that you get to. As it says, they will become pure and holy. Is the pasuk that's used for bringing the korbanot for Pesach and Shavuot. Why? In other words, you've got to get to exactly 50, because the number is exact. When it says tamim, they should be exactly 7 weeks. It means don't even go longer than 7 weeks. Sometimes we say the more the merrier. Right? If I should eat kazait matzah, sometimes I eat more than the kazait matzah to make sure that I ate it. In this case, he says counting is actually a very exact number. If you count less than 7 weeks, you haven't done sufficiently. If you count more than 7 weeks, you haven't done sufficiently. Why not? So I think what he's trying to say is, in the same way the world has an exact number that it stands with, if you overcount, you're deviating from that kind of historical context the Ramban believes in. Okay? That's the first piece of this. That's the Ramban. I want to do it in the Nesivos Shalom. Okay? It's extremely deep, correct. Okay, here we go. I want to do the first one that I'm giving to you, page Kuf Zayin. So once again, as you normally see, when I run them off myself on Saturday night, I usually do 2 or 3 of them over Shabbat. Then I got to decide which one I really want to do. The first one is actually shortest, but it's actually the most thing. It covers everything the others actually cover, but I think it covers it a lot easier to go through. So this is just the first one. The first page you have Kuf Zayin. Okay. So the Nesivos Shalom is trying to understand the concept, the connection between bringing the Omer, waving the Omer, counting the Omer. What's going on here, and why is it really talking about counting from Pesach as well? Why do we call it Shabbat? I'm not sure if he answered the last question directly. So let's take a look and see what he says. It's actually it's not one of the longer ones we have. It's a front and a back. Okay, so we should be able to do the whole thing. What time is it? 20 of. You'll tell me when we get to 11 o'clock if you want to break or we want to finish it up. This is the psukim that we just read. When you come to the land which I'm going to give to you, you're going to harvest the harvest. You're going to bring the Omer, the beginning of the Kitzirchem of your harvest to the Kohen.
When is it? When the whole Eretz Israel, or only part of it? When is it?
When does this begin? Probably after 14 years of Kibush v'Chiluk. Probably after the 14 years when they conquered the land and they divided it up. There's a period of time, according to the Talmud talks about, for the first 14 years when they came in, that they're still fighting and battling, and they haven't really divided up amongst the different tribes.
And they have to grow, right? I mean, they have to plant and reap. And
Yes, they do. Correct. Yeah.
so it takes a while.
But they could be planting and reaping while they're battling the enemy too. You've got to have something to eat.
Yeah.
An army runs on its stomach. So, and just the first 5 or 6 lines, just quoting the Psukim, the Kohen will take the Omer, he's going to wave it, he's going to wave the Omer, and then it says later on in the next paragraph, after about bringing the Karban of the Omer, the actual first of the meal offerings, or the first of the flour offerings of the barley, it says, you're going to count from the day after the rest day, from the day when you bring the Omer at Tanufa, you're going to bring a new mincha of 50 days later. That's Shavuot. When you bring the mincha, you're going to bring it, and it's going to be also called a lechem that you wave. Shtayim esronim, 2 esronim of the flour, and it's going to be called bikurim Hashem. It's going to be called bikurim, the first fruits. So you've got all this waving going on. You've got the counting of the Omer gets connected to the bringing of the Omer. And what's going on here? Isn't counting the Omer really counting to Shavuos? What is it connected to waving? And what's it connected to Bikurim? And what's it really connected to counting from Pesach? As Yesh Lahavin says, this asked the Nesivos Shalom, Lama mitzvah Omer nemra b'toch parshat Modot. First question is, why is the bringing of the Omer sacrifice? Not so much the counting. Why is the bringing of the Omer mentioned among the holidays? It's not really a holiday mitzvah. On the second day of Pesach, when you brought the first barley crop, what does it really have to do with all the holidays? Now, in this chapter 23 deals with Shabbat, Pesach, Shavuot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, and Shmini Atzeres. The fact that you begin to do it on the second day of Pesach is just really a relationship, but it's not a holiday law. So why is this even mentioned here? It should be found later on in a different place in the Torah, where it talks about bringing the first fruits, where it talks about bringing trumot and masrot and different gifts that you bring to the Beit Mikdash when you're able to harvest. The first 3 years you can't eat from the trees, the 4th year you bring it to the Beit Mikdash. What's it doing here in the middle of all the holidays, that you're counting these, bringing the Omer, counting it from the second day of Pesach all the way to Shavuot? That we start counting when we bring the Omer, the first harvest. And the end of the counting is really from the end when we bring the 2 loaves of Bikurim into the Beit Mikdash on Shavuot. Vimkain Tamua. The question is, what's it doing here with the holidays? It seems to be that the Omer is connected to the holidays. First question. Second question. Kain Tzarech Bior. Next question. Binyan Sfirat Omer. Regarding Sfirat Omer itself. Tell me if I'm going too quick. The Katav, it says you're going to count from the day after the rest day, from the day you bring the Omer, the day you bring the Omer to wave it. The counting of Sfira is connected to bringing of the Omer and the waving of the Omer. And in fact, it's even called, what's it called? Moshe Nikreis. What do we call it? Sfirat Omer, right? We don't call Sfirat Shavuos, we call it Sfirat Omer. What's the counting of the Sfira have to do with the bringing of the Omer that you wave to the Beis Mikdash? What's the purpose of Sfira? We're preparing ourselves for receiving the Torah. You got 7 weeks to get yourself in gear to receive the Torah. Don't wake up the morning of. To purify us from the shells means the Averot, or impurities. We got to clear ourselves from our, what should we say, zuama, our impurities, more than impurities, our shmutz. As it says in the Zohar, the same way that a woman who is a nidah has 7 days to become purified and separated from the dam, same way a zav has to separate from these impure flows, the same way a person who comes and becomes become impure with a mate needs 7 days to get away from this. So we need time to get away from our impurities to be able to receive the Torah as pure people. What does this have to do with bringing the Omer, which is about bringing the beginning of the flour, which was the barley flour on Pesach, and later the wheat flour on Shavuot? One more question. Why is the Omer called the Omer HaTnufa in this reading, called the Omer of waving? I understand that bringing Omer Where else do you talk about the fact that you wave something with the Kohen? Nowhere else. Maybe Bikurim too. Correct. Karbanot will wave, and not mentioned there either. But maybe also Bikurim mentioned. V'chein shnei lechem nikrim lechem tnufa. It says all. I'm not sure Bikurim it says that the Kohen takes it.
I thought the basket.
Does he? L'kacha Kohen temidecha v'inichol.
When do we bring Bikurim?
Anytime you have. The Bikurim of Tnufa that was mentioned is bringing the Shtei Alechem in Shavuot that we just read.
But we bring them when we come to the cemetery.
Yeah, but I'm not sure it really says that the Kohen waves it there. I don't know if it says the Kohen waves it there. Here it said, when it talked about bringing the 2 loaves on the Beit Mikdash on Shavuot, it called them that the Kohen will take, where is it? They call them. So you're going to bring a bit shnei sunim, tavil lechem tnufa, shnei sunim sot yenal chameis yafenu bikurim l'Hashem. That is the 2 loaves on Shavuot. That's not actually bikurim. I think the bikurim. I'm not sure if it says that you wave them. It says. It does not say it. Right, I'm reading it. It says Lakacha kohen atenem yadecha v'inichol lefnei mizbach Hashem alakecha. So the Kohen doesn't say that you're waving it there. You say you bring it to the Kohen, but does not say that you wave it. The Torah, maybe you do, but the Torah does not identify. But the waving of these Bikurim we're talking about is actually Shtei Lechem. So what's all this waving going on? And why is the Omer connected to waving? What's this real? It's about getting ready for Kabbalah Torah. So I lost my place. I'm going to start 4th line again on the 2nd paragraph. On the day that you wave the Omer, you're going to bring the sacrifice. The Omer is the first cutting of the harvest. It should say, it says the day that you bring the Omer, the beginning of your harvest. What's this Omer of the waving? And then also, even when you bring the Omer, it doesn't kind of talk to give you a clear day. It talks about the day after Shabbat. It says, when you talk about cutting the Omer, it doesn't tell you when. It says only when you wave it, is it going to be the day after Shabbat. And he says after he begins, here's what he answers. It seems to me to be him, the waving of this Omer, the waving of the first meal offering that you bring to the Kohen is intrinsic to the mitzvah. Somehow waving does something here. And in fact, as it is even called in the lashon of the Talmud, the words of Talmud, Yom Havat Omer, in Chazal call it Yom Hanaf, the day of bringing the Omer in the rabbinic literature, in Masechet Rosh Hashanah, in the Mishnah, it is called not the day of the Omer sacrifice, it's called the day of the waving, Yom Hanaf. So you have to explain what Keter, and so you have to explain why this is important, etc., etc. And as Rashi says, Rashi explains what is the tnufa, the waving. Rashi brought in the Chumash, he brings what Chazal say. What's the tnufa? Molich umevi, you bring closer, you bring far away. Ma'aleh umorij, you bring up and down. L'dalad ruchod u'l'malamata, you wave it in the 4 directions. You've got this little bit of flour, you wave it in the 4 directions and up and down, like you guys pointed out the lulav. The ilu binyan shnei lechem, later on at the end of the 50-day process, it says Tavio lechem tnufa shtayim, you bring the 2 lechem, and Rashi just says you wave it. Doesn't tell us what exactly the waving is. V'tzorch be'yer al dat avodah mahim beze bechinot shetnufa shnemur b'Rashi. How come Rashi explains in one place what you wave it, the second place he doesn't, and why it's called, the last question is why it's called Bikurim, and why is Shavuot called Bikurim? Why is Shavuot called Bikurim? So you bring the Bikurim on Shavuot, but so what? So what's it all about? So I'm going to skip to the left column, the new paragraph. V'yesh lomar. V'yesh lefaresh ha'inyan. Should be v'yesh lefaresh ha'inyan al pi ma'imar maran ha'admar v'bal beis Avram. She'ayachozer alav kol shana lefnei sfirat rishna b'shem aviv hakadosh. Every year he would say over the following word. Every year before he counted the Omer the first time. That what is the counting of the Omer all about? It's not just counting 2 Shavuot. And this is a lesson for us. When you're counting the Sfirah, you're referring to the pasuk that says God should save a man and a beast. Adamu ve'mato shiat Hashem. I forget where the pasuk is in Tehillim somewhere. Adamu ve'mato shiat Hashem. V'toshia Hashem. So which means we're asking God to save man and save a beast. And what are we really? What is human beings? We're beast and we are man. We have a combination. Everything we do and every day we wake up, we struggle and we have to fight whether we're going to be a beast or whether we're going to be a man. Which part of us is going to kind of beat out the other? And even if we're a beast, well, surely if we're a beast, but even if we're a man, we're still an earthy kind of man. Right? Maybe we can get dressed, and maybe we have a little embarrassment of showing ourselves off if we're naked. Maybe we do things that are a little more refined. But guess what? We still have shared commonalities with the animals. Except that we're a little smarter. Except that we can think abstractly. But everything we do, when you eat, that is a physical thing. When you sleep, that's physical. Right? And you walk, that's physical. So we are a beast, we're a man, but it's a combination that's very tenuous at best. She'omer korav misorim. The omer sacrifice that's brought on Pesach, on the second day is brought from sorim, which is barley. In the ancient world, shehei machal beima, barley was given to the animals to eat. I know you guys make barley soup. I know you put barley in your children. I got it. But barley as a separate food that was made into something substantive was not made in for people. It was more of a coarse kind of flour, and it was meant to be served to the animals. It was a cheaper flour, it was a cheaper produce, it was a cheaper grain, and it was meant for animal feed. Shtei halech, that was brought when? On Pesach. Shtei halecha makrivim michitim. The 2 loaves brought on Shavuot were brought from solet with chitim, the finest wheat flour, shemachal adam, which is human food. So the barley was made, if they wanted to make barley into a mash, they made it for the animals. If they wanted to make the wheat into a mash or to roast it or make the bread, it was for people. Which is what the Sfirah to Omer. Shezu avodat yimei Sfirah. This is what Sfirah is. Lizdakech, to purify ourselves, mibchinat behima, to purify ourselves from being animals. Shomavad in yonei tavot, ein lo balamot klum. What does an animal do in this world? What do animals? They eat, sleep, and procreate. I'm sorry, eat, sleep, and procreate. Yeah. That's what animals do. That's the purpose of an animal. Animals don't go to university. Animals do not build buildings. They don't develop architecture. They don't come up with rockets. They just do what they're doing because they want to ensure the survival of the species. And so they eat to survive, they sleep to regain energy, and they procreate to survive the species. That's all the animal does. The animal can't think beyond that. The man has a developed cerebrum that we think abstractly. We make choices that are good and bad. We can break out of what our animalistic instincts are. So the first thing is all the tavot, all of the lusts and desires of the animal are animalistic. That's all the animal is. So the animal is nothing in this world except to do its tavot, to do what it desires to be physically, eat, sleep, and procreate. We got to break out of that and lavo lebchinat adam, to reach becoming a human being, and that's what the waving is all about. So he says as follows: he says, taking this first waving of the barley flour, which is meant for the animals. What do you do with it, the Kohen? He kind of waves it all around. He's kind of like shaking the guy out of his slumber, out of his stupor. You're not an animal. Get up, wake up. That's what he's really trying to say here. It's a fantastic pshat. You wave the omer before Hashem. How do you wave it? So as he said before, quoting Rashi, and the Medrash says the same thing. You wave it back and forth, 4 directions, up and down. You're waving it. Why are you waving it around? You wave it up because God made everything. You wave it back and forth, and because God made the entire world, and you wave it up and down because everything in the above and below belongs to God. The same thing when the Leviim were actually sanctified and brought in to serve for their avodah. It says in Bamidbar chapter Chet, in Parshat Balotcha, V'nif Aaron et Leviim t'nufal lefnei Hashem. Aaron shook and waved the Leviim before Hashem, and then V'yu lavod levadat Hashem. Then they could serve God. V'vdatot Leviim yivdok v'nisval v'yilevim. And the Leviim were separate from everybody else. Aaron HaKohen Hanif called Levi to Nufal Lefnei Hashem. Aaron took every Levi and waved the Levi before Hashem. He shook him around. And this way he said to Levi, "You are different. You're no longer just a normal human being. You've now been bumped up to you've got a higher calling in life. Lavoda devodat Hashem. So this is what the shaking of this korban is, of this wheat, of this barley flour is, to say that you're no longer an animal. You've got other things here. You've got to recognize God controls the world. You've got to be awake. And that's why that's not just bringing the Omer, but it's shaking them or waving them back and forth. And what does a Jew have to do? A Jew has to shake himself up from this world, from being an animal in this world, and shake himself up towards to serve Hashem. This is the whole goal, the whole directive, the whole purpose of where the ending is for the counting of these days of the Sfiras Omer. As the Ramban says, the Ramban himself quotes in talking about the Sfira, we didn't read that part of the Ramban, that the counting of the Sfira is like a Cholamoid Aruch, like you have Cholamoid and Pesach, we have the first and the end. So this period of the Omer is a long Cholamoid of 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot. So we can't last the whole 49-day period plus 7 plus 2 or 1 to make a whole Yontif, but it's connecting both holidays. Each holiday has a significance. God took us out of Egypt and gave us a bump up on Pesach. When we get to Sinai on Shavuot, God gave us the Torah. So the period in the middle is kind of shaking us up. Jews got to wake up from everything in this world. After Pesach and the Exodus, so after we woke up on Pesach, that we were chosen by God, and God had to take us out of Egypt. We couldn't have done it on our own. It's like the Harvey Booker, has the diet guy. If you could have done it on your own, you would have done it by now. Right? So this is what the Ramban, what the Mefarshim says. God took us out of Mitzrayim because we were so stuck down, we couldn't make the first step. We couldn't get out of the mud. God had to give us like a bump out, and He had to do it right quickly. That's why Pesach is done. You had the Chametz. There was the Chametz is also. It's got to be done quickly. You were done behelafai and very quickly. So God took us out in Egypt and on Pesach, and He chose us. And after that comes what? Boim Yimei Sfira. Comes the counting of the Omer Shav Tafkid Bohem. It's the time that Na'er Mi'olam Hazeh B'Turfat HaOmer T'nvan Shtei Alechem. It's the Omer by shaking the Omer in the beginning and shaking the Shtei Alechem at the end. We are waking ourselves up and we're connecting ourselves to the sanctity of the Shavuot. Shemitavav Ben Miyot Umitavot and Eshiyot. And here he adds this. Not only you're waking yourself up from your animalistic lust, even your physical human lust you're going to wake yourself up for. And Shtei Alechem, and the 2 lechem that you bring on Shavuot, what does that represent? So here he throws in another piece. Alechem kibshuto. It refers to lechem, which is a physical thing you all got to eat. So when we eat, every time we eat, we make a bracha. When we have to think if it's kosher, because eating is very physical. Eating is very animalistic. But even, he says, it's not just when eating, bringing the bread is reminding us about eating. It reminds us something else. It reminds us about sexuality. That as well has to be kadosh. Why? Because Chazal say about Yosef, when Yosef was there as the servant in the house of Potiphar, so Potiphar, it says that Potiphar didn't know anything but bayit, ki im halechem asher hu ochel. He only knew about the bread that he ate. And the Medrash says, what does it mean that Potiphar only knew about the bread he ate? Who does know about the bread you eat? It doesn't refer to the bread he ate, it means about the woman whom he slept with, the wife of Potiphar. The only thing that Potiphar's brain was involved in was being with his wife. That's all he knew what was going on. Sounds far-fetched, but lechem asher hu ochel is a physical thing, and as well, sexuality is a physical thing. So sometimes lechem, which is physical eating, also refers to physical, other parts of the physical lust as well. The Jew has to sanctify everything in his life, not just making a bracha there, but also recognize that sex can be holy. Now you understand why the Omer counting is found amongst the holidays. Why? What's the doing with the holidays? And why it's connected to bringing the Omer to the Beit Mikdash. Because the counting of the Omer is connected to the service of bringing the Omer in the temple, which was sanctified. And the counting of the Omer is meant to make us holier and better during this time period. So the reason is all connected to holidays, because holidays are periods of time when we focus on God. When you had Pesach, you sat at the Seder, you thought about God taking us out. You came to the seventh day, you thought about the sea splitting in half. So there's special times during the year that we can but work to make sure that we have time to recognize God. You recognize God every Shabbat, but this is unique about the periods in Jewish history where God did miracles for us. Okay. The top of the next page, the new paragraph. It says, I'm going to just go on for 5 more minutes to finish this before we break. We're good? Stay with me? Okay. It doesn't say bikurim. When it says when you bring the omer to the Beit Mikdash, it doesn't call it bikurim. It says you're going to bring it because bringing the omer is really the beginning of the count. The omer is made of barley flour. What's barley flour for? Animals. What's the beginning of the count? We're counting from becoming animals to becoming human beings. You don't want to call this bikurim Lashem. You only want to call it bikurim Lashem when it comes to Shavuot, the 2 lechem, which is human existence, which says we've made the transition from being just simply animalistic instincts to becoming a human that can think out of our body. So then we can say bikurim. Rak basof, only at the end, the achar havodah shel yemei sfira, after the days of the work of counting the 49 days, and we get to magim b'chag Shavuot, that we get to become the b'chinat adam, we become human, non-animalistic, beyond being animal. The Yaz Ksiv, and then it says, what does it say in the pasuk? Mimosh v'techem toviyat lechem tenufa shtayim bikurim Lashem. You're going to bring the 2 lechems which are bikurim. V'chein chag Shavuot atzmo nikra yom bikurim, and that's why Shavuot is called Yom Bikurim, the day of the first fruits. Not because you bring the first fruits. That's a simple meaning, because that's when the first fruits come due, and you bring it to Shavuot. Why? Ki hu achag hakadosh miyuchad haba rishon lachayitz yit mitzrayim. It's the first fruits, not the first fruits, the first holiday after we came out of Egypt. We had a chance to really rise. We got the kick out of Egypt by God. But that's only temporary. That's a jump start. Like if your battery goes dead and they jump your battery. So you can't start your battery on. They jump the battery, then you got to charge your battery. How do you charge it? You put your foot on the accelerator. You got to charge your battery. So we got the kick jump out of the Mitzrayim by God, but for the next 40 days we had to do it on our own. We had 49 days after that, starting not on the day of Pesach, because the day of Pesach, when you can't start counting the second day, the day of Pesach, God gave us the kickstart. Once we got kicked out of Mitzrayim, once God gave us that push, so what happens the second day? We're on our own. Right? The CAA has left. And now I got to keep my foot on the pedal, because if I don't keep my foot on the pedal and recharge the battery, what's going to happen? It's going to be dead. We're going to have to call the CAA to get a jump start again. We got the jump start on the first day of Pesach when God took us out. We're on our own beginning the second day of Pesach. So we count from the second day, and now we're counting all the way to Shavuot. We've moved up to 49 levels, from 49 levels of impurity to the levels of purity. And now we've reached the first holiday we have. The first time we can celebrate this on the calendar is receiving the Torah, which is the first holiday that we have. That's called Bikurim. It's the first fruit, the fruit of our labor, the fruit of the count. We've reached that upper level of being the first for Hashem. We're chosen to be unique to Hashem. That's also why Rashi kind of changes the waving. He goes into greater detail when we're waving at the beginning of the Omer in Pesach, and he just mentions, doesn't really detail what happens when we wave it on Shavuot. Shehu al da'at ma shekotav Rashi b'tnofat haLevim. It's the same thing when Rashi says when they shook the Levim and wove the Levim when they began the service. Shenemru sham shlosh shlosh shlosh. The 3 types of Tnufah, because the 3 types of Leviim. Kahat Gershon Amari. Each one was shook a little differently, says Rashi. I'm not sure what he means, because each of the 3 families of the Levi, Kahaz, Gershon, and Merari, had different jobs, and therefore they were shook in a different way. At the beginning, therefore, of our Sfiras Omer, in our case here, when we start counting, we got to wave us, the Kohen takes the sacrifice, the Omer offering of the flour of the Sorim, waves it up and above, back and forth, to make us aware, to raise it higher and lower, because we're low. He's got to wake us up. And all the four directions, because you got to start knowing where God is. But you get to the end, when you get to Shvot, to bring the two loaves of wheat loaf, of wheat bread, which is human existence, human values. It doesn't really have to go into detail, because it's very clear what it is. We've reached Magila B'chinat Adam. We've reached these upper levels. And therefore, so this is really what it is. Okay, so now you know the purpose. Give me 5 more minutes just to finish this up. Yeah, it's one more piece to this. So what's the purpose of Sfiras HaOmer? They have to improve ourselves. To go from one level to another, go up to the level of stairs. So now he says something, I'm not sure, I forget how he connects it indirectly, but you see in a moment, but he says something that is so true for human nature. When you have to make change, if you got a pile of things that you got a list of things you have to do in the house. You got to fix. Which ones do you do first?
The short one.
The easy one. You do the easy one first. See, I get it off my list. I get it off my bucket list. I've done it. I've cleaned this shelf. I don't want to clean the basement. I clean this one shelf first. And then I'm going to tackle the garage.
In the session, if you finish the easy one.
Right, finish the easy one. That's it. You look at the test, you don't know which one is. You do the easy ones first. He says that's human nature. So he says that's exactly what you shouldn't be doing with Sfiras HaOmer. Because that's human nature to try to defer making real change. When you want to make change, as we all do in Sfiras HaOmer, because that's the real purpose, do first the easy thing, says the Yetzer Hara. The real things that you really got to make real internal change, really kind of redirect yourself, re-land in a different place, that you push off. And here's how he ties it connected. He doesn't want to connect it to Sfiras HaOmer, he connects it with another pasuk. The Baal Bris Avram said, Adam ki yakriv mikem korban Hashem. It says when a person will bring from you a korban Hashem, when you bring a korban Hashem, shall akriv korban Hashem tzarich lakriv mikem, from you. You got to make a real change within you. You want to become closer. Korban is coming closer to God. You got to do it from within you, not the externalities. She akriv et advarim hakashim alav yoter. What's important for you, that's really coming close to Hashem. And he says, Mikem, when you're going to bring Mikem from yourselves, Mem, Kaf Mem, is Rashi Tevot, is the Rashi Tevot, Mida Keneged Mida. Mida Keneged Mida means? Measure for measure. Hainu Shedavkot Amida Shabalo Bekoshi Yakriv Hashem Yisbarach. The hardest thing that you're doing away from Hashem, you got to turn around. If you really want to make change, you got to change from where the hardest part is. Ubi Mea Svira Shem Hayamim HaKadoshim B'Shana Shem Tzarich Yodi L'Tzeit M'B'chinat Behema V'liot M'B'chinat Adam, on the day of Svira, that you got to go from being an animalistic, to being a human being, humanistic. Allah l'kayem adam ki akriv mikem. You got to make the change from mikem, mida keneged mida, me'atz mechem, from you to be a korban Hashem. And that's what it says. The muraz b'shnei alechem, the two loaves that are brought on Shavuot, kol enyinim shalav shosh adam machamatam. Everything that you want, that you desire, that you really are feel you're so tied to, shemechlal lachanal kabat Torah, sheyuditzrich l'akriv et shnei alechem el Hashem. You got to turn it around and bring yourself close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's really the whole purpose of what it is. And then he actually says at the very last piece, of course, he likes to try to connect everything to Shabbos. He says to some extent, this is what just to do briefly the last paragraph, this is the Tachlit of Yitziat Mitzrayim, this is what coming out of Egypt is, and Anoch Hashem Elokecha Shotzatiti Mitzrayim, because a Jew, what is a real Jew, if it doesn't clarify himself, Sheyudi Yizakech Bavodatom Mibchinat Beima, Jew has to purify himself from being an animal, which is Shadam Ayar Para Yivalei, or Yolid, that a person is a wild ass who gives birth, which was born like this. And he's got the Yetzer Hara controls him until he comes to Yom HaBikurim, etc., 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 etc. What did he say about the Shabbat? Actually, he doesn't say it here. He says in one of the other places. Okay. Shekol, said, Shekol Shabbat Yom Tov Himzech L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. Every Yontiv is this as well, and every Shabbat is this as well. Every Shabbat on its own, as well as every Yontiv. Shemaskirim L'Yidisha Love L'Yetziat Mitzrayim. We have to get out of our own personal Egypt. We have to break out of Egypt. Mechelek Mitzrayim Shalo, from the Egypt within us. V'Klipa She'er Vatar She'er B'Kabo, and the Klipa, the sin of the sin within the land itself. And that is the whole purpose of every Yontiv, of all the Yomim Tovim, and especially Chag HaPesach. And when a Jew does this, he kind of breaks out from the externalities and comes close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In one of the other pieces that we're not doing, he says it's actually what Shabbat is. Every day, every week itself, you're breaking out and trying to get closer to next Shabbat. So there you have it. It's a very powerful message about straight over
this. This is in line with his usual thing. Shabbat is Shabbat Bereshit, and then improvement.
Yeah. Right.
More.
Okay, good.
But I didn't get the answer to my question.
So the piece we did know is where it says that it's really connected to Shabbat, because Shabbat is coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us a help as well. If we want to improve, we first have to recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us. Shabbat is coming from Itaruta de Le'ela.
Right.
So the same way that Pesach was also recognized, Pesach has a little bit of Shabbat within it. The initial part of Pesach was God gave us the bump out of Egypt, and then we worked on our own. So we have to recognize the role of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and even helping us as we try to make improvements. And that's why it's called Machat Shabbat, to remind us that Shabbat Breshit is Shabbat of Itaruta de Le'ela, not just Itaruta de Tata. That's what he said. And I think it's the third piece that he has. So it's a very long piece. Okay, 5-minute break, otherwise, because time is flying away, and it is, believe it or not, it's after 10 o'clock. So, for the opening parts of Parashat Behar deal with Shemitah and deal with the Yovel, the Jubilee year. And I think, just in general, just looking at the Psukim, question is, why is Behar Sinai? Vaydavesh Moshe Behar Sinai Lemor. Why is Har Sinai mentioned here? So Rashi, actually, we leave that for Thursday when I deal with a Nesivos Shalom, which will give us an explanation. But Rashi says that it gave us one example about the Shemitah, which we're told was given at Har Sinai, the same way that Shemitah, which we're about to read, was given at Har Sinai. All the other mitzvot were given at Har Sinai. It doesn't really explain why specifically Shemitah was chosen, because it seems to say this mitzvah we're about to read was a mitzvah given at Sinai, and we know all the mitzvot were given at Sinai. Why specifically Shemitah? That we'll deal with on Thursday when we deal with Nesivos Shalom. That kind of explains it. And
why? Because Har Sinai, it was the lowest mountain.
Yes.
He didn't think anybody can enjoy him. So I'm small mount. Who need me? Who Hashem, you know what? I give the Torah on you because you are very much. That's the reason when Shemitah, when you bitachon b'Hashem, you have a bitachon b'Hashem, you have a produce.
So that's pretty much what Nesivos Shalom says about bitachon and amunah, is why it's focused specifically on Har Sinai. Good. So we'll come back to more detail maybe on Thursday.
Rabbi, this is very, very difficult.
Amunah?
No, not Amunah. Is it Amunah? I was in Israel in the 60s.
Yes.
I was in the Kibbutz commute. There was Shemitah. They don't do nothing.
Right.
So the people helped them, but come on, how much to kill them? It was, for them, it was a disaster.
True. Yes.
Baruch Hashem, now we have now something else. With every Shemitah, we have a Karen Shemitah, they send money.
Right.
But those days, who was...
Where were you in the 50s? Which community?
I have in Yerushalayim, but my sister was working in the teacher in the commute.
What's it called? Komiyot, which is a kibbutz or moshav. Right. True. It's extremely difficult. There are different ways to work with it today, including what's called Otzar Beitin, when the farmers really sell their produce to a Beitin. It becomes like communal produce.
They don't accept. That's the problem. They don't accept that.
Oh, great.
Otzar
Beitin is a little different. There are different ways to work with it. They use hydroponics. The kibbutzim are not as dependent on agriculture as a single industry as they were, but there are different ways to work with Shemitah today that they're able to work with the land in some degree. Okay. Also, it's not every part of the southern Israel may be biblical Israel, or maybe the parts that were consecrated by Sheni. So, but we're going to deal more directly with maybe the meaning of what Shemitah is. But you're raising very good questions how it can be done in a modern economic structure. So Vaydaber Shem Moshe Bahar Sinai Limor, Daber B'nai Yisrael V'yomar Ta'alehem, speak to the Jewish people, Ki Tavo La'aretz, and I'm going to give to Yoshin and Nilten Lachem, V'shavta Shabbat Hashem. The land will rest, the Shabbat for Hashem. Sheish Shanim Tizvah Sadecha, 6 years you'll work the land. V'sheish Shanim Tizmar Kamecha, in 6 years you'll prune, and you're going to prune your vineyards. V'yosef Ta'at V'otzah, you're going to gather in your crops. Does that mean you have to work? You have to work for 6 years? Looks like it's a mitzvah to work. Okay, V'shana Shviyit Shabbat Shana Shabbaton Yelarz, and the 7th year it's going to be Shabbaton, a year of rest. Shabbat Tila Shabbat Lashem, Shabbos Lashem, Sadcha Lo Tizov, Karmecha Lo Tizmar, and as a result, you're going to have all these things. You're going to be Shana Shabbaton Yelarz, and Pasuk 6, Haytan Shabbatos Lachem Lechlal Le'avdecha V'Lamotech V'Lesimcha Toshchav V'Gurim Imach. It's going to be Shabbat for you and your workers and your servants and your people live with you, and for them to Chav L'Chayesh Shabbat. So you have a Shemitah year that's there, and we'll talk about that in a moment. And then the next paragraph talks about going the 7 sabbatical years. Safarto L'cha Sheva Shabbatot Yishanim Sheva Shanim Sheva Pamim. 7 sabbatical years. We'll go 7 times 7. Vayu L'cha Yimei Sheva Shabbatot Yishanim Teisha Rabim Shna, 49 years. Vavartar Shofar Tua B'chodesh Hashvi B'asar L'chodesh B'yom Kippur. We're going to blow the shofar on Yom Kippur of the Yovel year and all the in B'chol Artzachem. You're going to sanctify the 50th year, you're going to call freedom. How they translate Dwar? Proclaim freedom throughout the land to all inhabitants. Yovel Hiti Elechem. It's going to be a Yovel year, Jubilee year. Everybody will return. The land will return. The people will return. And Yovel Hiti Shnata Chamishin Shana Lo Tizrov Lo Tzikzrul Svicha. You can't work. You can't prune. You can't plant. And Velosiv Tzurot Nizirel Ki Yovel Hiti Kodesh Elechem. And therefore, it's going to be you have this Jubilee year. Vishnata Velzot Teshuvu Yichalachuz. So the land will be returned. So I got 7 years makes a Shemitah. 7 times 7 makes 49, and the 50th year is going to be a sabbatical year.
So it's been 2 years Shemitah?
It's going to be 2 years of Shemitah, correct. It's going to be 2
not
years.
Easy.
It's not
2 years Shemitah.
Correct. It's not going to be easy. Exactly correct. Right.
It's not Hamishim. You have 3 years. You have a Tua for 1 year. For you is enough for 3 years. Continuously.
So how do they
Right.
do it? How do they do it?
So that's the Emunah, it's belief in Hashem, correct? So in a simple world, they try to store up and prepare for, and they believe that Hashem would provide, correct? And that's what the Bhakti, if you just skip ahead to the next page for a minute.
But in our history, really, mostly it was not done. People didn't do it.
What it means our history, modern history?
No. People in old history.
Yovel
They didn't do it.
Why do you say that?
What?
Why do you say that?
Because I thought they were punished for that because they didn't keep the Shemitah.
So they were exiled because they didn't keep the Shemitah, correct? Okay. First temple.
Right.
Second base of Mikdash, did they keep it?
I would assume not, because the second was even worse than the first one. Kohen Gadol, there was no Kohen, things like that. I mean,
Maybe.
Up and down.
I don't know. Could be. We don't really have a reference to it, do we? Right. But we do have a lot of takanot that Chazal made. They're concerned about people who are socharei shvi'it, who work the shvi'is the year, who are merchandising in shvi'is, which means, if you read the Mishnah, the Masechet Shvi'is, which deals with it, and the Gemaras that quote these, the Yerushalmi that talks about it, it looks that they tried to keep the Shemitah, but it just were people who kind of didn't keep it. Some people didn't keep it, but you get the feeling some people did keep it.
Right.
I wonder what the relation between the gathering of the manna and this has something to do with it.
Well, the gathering of the manna was in the Midbar, and this is really in Israel.
Yeah, but still, the logic is the same, right? You can only gather for that day. You can't gather for any other day. And on Shabbat, you take 2 portions, and this kind of thing.
The logic is both of them really deal with a lot of trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's
Right,
correct.
yeah.
Right, true. Right. So this is why when the people came back and they began redeveloping the land, and the first kibbutzim turned to look for a heter mechira to sell the land to a guy in the late 1800s, and they turned to Rav Yitzchak Elchanan Spector, who was probably the posek of the Dor of that generation in the late 1800s. He gave them a heter to allow them to sell the land of kibbutzim. They renewed that 7 years later when the next Shemitah came about, because how tenuous life was when they first returned. The same way that you sell your chametz, you sell the land. Selling the land to a guy is a lot more complex than selling chametz, because the question is, can you sell the land? Can you sell the land? Do you really believe you are selling the land?
Like the chametz.
Well, the chametz is, what's the worst case scenario? The guy knocks on my door and he says, I want my chametz. And you say, here's your chametz and you have to pay me for it.
Yeah.
You don't take a loss. It's a fair market value. But if the guy says after the year of the Shemitah, I don't want to give you back the land, what does that mean? We're going to say, okay, pay us for the land and you can stay here? With the early chalutzim, or even the later chalutzim, where they really believe that they are selling land, they're fighting to get this land. So that's number one. The second question is, I know I can sell my produce, I can sell my chametz, but if I sell the land, does it take the kedusha off of the land itself? Is the kedusha of the land dependent on my not owning the land? Can I still work the land even if it's owned by a non-Jew?
That's right.
Right?
What about
The land is not even theirs in the
it's
first place.
chirut, or working on like a kablan?
But does that take the kedusha of the land away? Does that remove the kedusha? These were some of the questions that were raised. The questions really revolve on two things. One are halachic questions: does this work? Can this really affect and make the land now permissible? The second question were more ideological: do you really believe that you're selling the land? I mean, I don't. If a guy would come for my chametz, take my chametz. You want to take my whiskey, clean out my locker cabinet? That's fine, but you've got to pay me for the worth of the locker cabinet, what's in the whiskey, whatever it is, $200. So, on the other hand, if I have a lot of whiskey, let's say I'm a beer store, or I'm selling whiskey because that's my arrangement, you have to pay me for that value. But that's a little different than saying, here's the land. That's just a different kind of way of looking at things.
We're not allowed to sell the land.
Right, and so we can't sell the land, and second of all, do you really intend therefore to sell the land? Because you can sell the land, lo tonu, you can't allow give access to goyim to own land in Eretz Yisrael.
You don't sell it. You give it to Be'edin.
So now they have a concept where it's called a beitin, otzar beitin, not hefker beitin, hefker, where the beitin really tends to kind of deal with the sales of the merchandise. They own the land, but the beitin is the one who actually, I'm not sure exactly how the otzar beitin works, but it's a different kind of process than what was years ago from selling the land. It has a lot more validity to it than the land that was not sold. The other part, and this becomes applicable today, if you don't use your produce, where are you going to buy it from? You're going to buy it from the Arabs. Do you really want to support the Arab economy by buying their produce? Besides the fact that in many cases the Arabs were buying from the Jews and reselling it back under their private label. But more importantly, from an ideological point of view, do you really want to support this? Do you want to really give your money to the Arabs who would like to get rid of you? So that's why it's a very complex kind of thing. I'm not sure that I can talk about all the specific details, but there are mechanisms that allow us to kind of work and distribute the land and the produce today that are permissible halachically, and many people do rely upon it. Not everybody does rely upon it. So it's a little bit.
In Israel, non-Jews own land, don't they?
Yes, they do. But do you want to give them more land?
More land, yeah. So how do they get it in the first place? I mean, how do you sell? Let's say a non-Jew wants to buy a nice villa in Jerusalem.
You buy it.
Sure. But from a halachic perspective, Israel is not necessarily a halachic state. Buying land in Israel is so confusing because you don't know who the owner of the land is. There's land that's owned by the church. There's land that's owned by Arabs. There's land that's owned by Jews. There's land that's owned by the state. And you want to know something? There's nothing in Israel that is comparable to buying title insurance that you have here. When you buy a property, you should, or you probably did, buy what's called title insurance, which means if they've checked the title and found that the land was actually transferred properly, and then suddenly they find out years later there was a fraud, the title insurance protects you. It says, you did your due diligence, this is what the insurance policy is when they sell it. There's no such thing in Israel. There's no such thing. And there was a situation came up in Jerusalem recently where the church owned a lot of land and they were deciding they're not going to renew the leases. People lease it for 99 years. Like people live on the islands here.
Yeah.
They don't own, they lease the land. So the church says we want to redevelop the land, and people suddenly were given short notice. There was a lot of pressure put on that. I don't know what happened in the end. So buying land is extremely complex. The fact that non-Jews can buy land, but that's not the same as me selling to non-Jew. right? I can be selling land when I don't even own the land. I'm selling the rights to release the land on the lease that I have originally, which may be for 99 years. At any rate, this is all extremely complex and a little bit out of my territory at this moment because I didn't really prepare all the specifics about using land and Shemitah today. But I want to talk about some of the reasons that go behind what the Shemitah land is all about. So I thought we would look at some Rambans that deal with Shemitah and that deal with Shemitah and Yovel, which the Rambans in Pasuk Beis and Pasuk Gimel. Okay? And there's one English rolling around.
Yep.
Okay.
Perek.
Chav Hey, Pasuk Bet. There's a number of long Rambans. We're going to focus really on two of them. Okay. And the Ramban is going to come back to something we talked about last week, which is about that the years of the Shemitah, or the 7-year cycle, and the 7-year day really represents the number of the years of the world existence. Okay.
What number?
Bet, 25-2. 25-2. Okay. Lo matzata? Aleph is very long.
Bet, okay.
Ken. Chav Hey Bet. Chav Hey Bet.
Kuftet Zayin?
Yeah, I don't know. Where is he?
Kuftet Vav.
Are you in Parak Chav Hey? What page number?
Kuftet Vav.
Kuftet Vav. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Kuf Samech Vav. Samech Vav.
Okay.
Couldn't get in the building here.
In the building?
Welcome.
You got a buzz.
Good.
Tzvi.
This is Tzvi Malovsky. Welcome. Okay, great. You couldn't get in the building?
Up here and I'm banging on the door. Finally, the Booker had the harness on.
So we'll give you a secret how to get in, okay?
Secret.
There's
He told me it's 324.
that door. But he didn't tell you which door.
You didn't know where is it, huh?
I didn't know where to press.
Okay. All right.
Where am I?
25-2.
Where's 25?
Where's
That's this
25-2?
building. I don't know where it is exactly.
You don't know where 25-2 is? Okay.
I can't see today. I can't see. Too small.
Not only do I have to learn Hebrew, I got to learn Latin now too.
Why not?
1 second. Here you go. I got to teach you Latin. I got to teach you
No, I know
Roman.
that.
It's Roman numerals.
No, I was looking at the regular numbers, Arab.
Okay, so these are long pieces. 24, 25. 1 second.
Tell him which page is.
Page? No, it's English.
No, he took the other one. Here we go. 2.
Kuf Tzvi.
Oh, okay.
Page.
Kuf Samech Vav. The page Kuf Samech Vav, the top.
Okay, so this is about the sabbatical year. You guys
Safe
want to do it
bet.
together? Here we go. There's one here that's Hebrew and English too. Okay, 2 is over here somewhere. Okay. Shabbat Lashem. So says the Ramban, what's the Shabbat Lashem? When it says, why is it a Shabbat? The sabbatical year is going to be Shabbat Lashem. It should say it's going to be simply Shabbat. When you come to land that I give to you, B'Shavtahar, it's Shabbat. Mazda Shabbat Lashem. So says the Ramban, Lashem Hashem. This is going to be for Hashem's name. In other words, the word Hashem is that you're not really resting for your own benefit. It's not like you're taking time off that you can enjoy it. It's not that you're doing it to help the land even. Like if you let the land lie fallow, the land will get better. That's not really the purpose of Shabbat, of the sabbatical year, but rather Hashem Hashem. It's for God's name in the same way that Bereshit is really to rest, to recognize the power of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the land itself. So in other words, this is really the same way that Shabbat is not about simply relaxing and taking it easy. It's dedicating something to recognize the power of the Almighty to create the world, and He can do everything, and He finished it within the 6 days. So too, the power of the Almighty of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to actually make the land fruitful and be available for us to plant the land. And 1 year out of 7, we're therefore going to rest and not work the land. That's what the Ramban says first of all. However, the rabbis in their medrash, in their drashot, did not really read it like that. Why? Because the truth is every holiday, every Shabbat is really for Hashem. What do you mean this is Shabbat Lashem? What do you mean this is like Shabbat Hashem, like Shabbat is for Hashem? And none of the other holidays are called Shabbat Lashem. but rather it says, and this is part of what we did last week in Parshat Emor, which talked about the different holidays. It says Yelachem Shabbaton. This holiday will be for you a Shabbaton, and it says for Yom Kippurim Shabbat Shabbaton Hu Lachem. It's a Shabbat for you. So in other words, it seems to say the other holidays are really Shabbat for you. Even on Yom Kippur is called Shabbat for you. In the same way, however, what does it mean Shabbat Lashem? What does it really mean in the Braita found in Torah Konim? Shabbat Hashem, Keshem Shnema b'Shabbat Beishit, Kach Nema b'Shvit, Shabbat Lashem. And it says it means to use this term itself. So what does it really refer to? Does it really refer to Shabbat for you, Shabbat for Hashem? What does it mean to enjoy it? Like the holidays are really to enjoy as well. So what is it? Shabbat Lashem Elokecha Amur b'Shabbat Beishit Ki bo Shabbat v'inafash. In other words, what does it mean that the Shabbat that we observe every week, we're observing it because HaKadosh Baruch Hu rested, and therefore Kain lo taseh kol melacha. Therefore we shouldn't do work, and therefore it says L'kach mukichein nemar b'shmita shvit bashanim. The same thing comes to Shemitah. We shouldn't work. So in other words, Ramban simply says, according to what Rashi says, the Shabbat Lashem means you want to recognize God. The Ramban says it's also the fact that Shabbat means you can't do work. Calling it Shabbat Lashem is the same way the Almighty did not create, so also we don't create more produce on the Shemitah year. So it's a discussion really between what the word Shabbat Lashem is. Are we emphasizing the dedication to Hashem, or are we also just dedicating the fact to the fact that we can rest and we cannot create on the day of itself of Shabbat, and therefore we can't create on the year of Shemitah itself.
Why can't I say simply that regular Shabbat is Shabbat Oneg? I have Oneg, I have something out of it, and Shemitah I don't have anything from it. It's all Hashem.
Does you have no Oneg? Why do you have Oneg on Shabbat? Because you prepared on Friday.
I'm supposed to have Oneg, and I do. I eat, I drink.
So why don't I have Oneg on the Shemitah year?
You don't work.
I don't have food.
I don't have food on Shabbat either. So the answer is you prepared on Friday for Shabbat.
Right, but Shemitah, what can I do?
You have to prepare a whole year, right?
No,
you have to prepare the year before.
They will give us double.
How you can double if you've not worked?
So that's why Shabbat Lashem. So therefore, why is it called Shabbat Lashem? Means that you are going to rely.
It's all to Hashem.
It's all to Hashem. It's not for me.
What does a person do for Yovel?
What do we do for Yovel? We have 3 years in a row. Correct.
3 years. You got to prepare for 3 years.
Because you work on the 48th year. You don't work on the 49th. You don't work on the 50th, and then you got to start the next year. That's true, right? But actually, and that's actually what the pasuk says in verse 19. It says you're going to have, after introducing the Shemitah year, it says you'll have 3 years. The land will produce for 3 years. But you're right, it is bitachon, and we had mentioned that before you came in that this is one of the key values of Shemitah is really bitachon, it's trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is why it is suggested that when the pasuk opens up Parshat BeHar and introduces Shemitah, it calls it where was it said in Har Sinai, because Har Sinai accepting the Torah and Shabbat and everything is bitachon, and this is bitachon as well. Okay. At any rate, so we all recognize that the difficulty and the bitachon and the amunah in trying to work, leave the land fallow for the year, and rely upon HaKadosh Baruch Hu to ensure that we have enough stockpile to last through the year itself. Okay.
How do you explain that to a 5-year-old child who was hungry and?
So it depends what you're stockpiling. Depends what you're stockpiling. It's going to be harder to get fresh vegetables, but it'll be a lot easier to get stuff that can be stockpiled, like grain.
If it's warm, it's not warm. Warm.
What I understood, you can eat from the produce, you can't plant it.
Right. So you have stuff. So correct. So stuff that grew by itself, you could take. Right.
But anybody can take it.
Yes. I can't stop you from taking it. We all have equal access.
If you have land, I can go on your land and take it.
Yeah.
True, yes. But the concept of an idyllic society where everybody has equal access is either called the Torah's value of Shemitah or it's called communism. Okay? But the communism is based upon the same concept, that we're all going to share equally.
But not for
What happens to be that communism broke down because people didn't have a real commitment to communism, because there were those who had and those who didn't have. Right?
If you have that land, you can't stop me from taking it.
That's correct. Correct. And you will take what you need because you can't really stockpile it for the future. You have to.
I can't
You,
When I Shemitah lamb, it's hefker. I can't take and stockpile that
Right, true.
right,
Right,
correct.
true.
You can't stockpile it either. You can take what you need, and I can take what I
for
need.
that day.
Right. So we have all equal access.
So you can't gather it all and put it in your...
No,
You can't store it away. You can't store it
you
away.
can't store it away?
Because then you'd be denying other people the access. So the issue,
bitachon.
right. So this is really about now. What I want to do is just kind of move to the next piece of the Ramban, and then we'll come back if there's still, to try to see how this works in the real world. The Ramban now takes the concept of Shemitah, which is a simplistic concept, and we all recognize the difficulty in terms of the bitachon to try to make it work. But the Ramban now takes it to that next level, which is really about the concept of Shemitah year, of a cycle and another cycle representing the length of time of the world. This we talked a little about last week. We sent out that piece at the end right before Shabbat. I think, when did I send it out to you? Friday? Yeah, yes. Was that Friday? Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay. So writes the Ramban. Let's do the next piece. It's really complex and it's really very deep. V'hine b'chan. It's right afterwards. So it's where we're exactly where we're up to.
Okay.
V'hine b'chan oru otanu b'sod gadol misodot haTorah. Now, I'm going to the rabbis woke us up to a very real secret, a very important part of the secret about the Torah, about the Shemitah. Uvakvar Ramaz Rabbeinu Avraham, and the Ibn Ezra already kind of alluded to this secret that goes behind it. When the Ibn Ezra writes, he says, "V'tam Shabbat Lashem Kiyom Shabbat." And the Ibn Ezra writes, the reason for Shabbat Lashem, not Shabbat Lashem because you want to remember Hashem, not Shabbat Lashem because HaKadosh Baruch Hu rests, because you want to recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the world and He rested on Yom Shabbat. And Yom Shabbat does not only refer to the day of Shabbat, but there's something more than that. The Sod Yemot Olam, and therefore, what is this really about? Sod Yemot Olam Ramuz Makom Hazeh. The basis of the length of the world, existence of the world, is based and found in this location where we're talking here about the Shemitah year. So in other words, the concept of having a Shemitah year of 7 years, and we have a pasuk that says, Ki elef shanim beinecha ki yom, 1,000 years is equal to 1 day. So 7 years is going to be equal to, 7 years will equal to 7,000 years. So the Shemitah cycle, this is where this comes from. The Shemitah cycle is going to be based upon the existence of the world, which will be for 7,000 years. 6 years of normal existence. The 7,000 will be that Shabbat existence, and that's the hidden part in the Kabbalah underneath what the Shemitah year is all about.
What's the expression?
Ki elef shonim beinecha ki yom esmol. Yeah, yesterday will be like for God is 1,000 years is like yesterday. 1 day, so the Chazal say that 1 day in our lifetime equals 1,000 years in the Almighty's plan.
Yeah. Right, so then 1 year, it's 365,000.
So
years.
one year, Elef Shon Yom, 1 year is 1 day kill, alright? So 1 year,
so much more than
so maybe so I guess they're equating 1 year to 1,000 years. Not sure why Ki Elef Shon
Yom is 1 day for 1,000.
I don't know. Good question.
Because Ari Kaplan also computes the same thing to get to the 18 billion.
Right.
Yeah, he says 42,000 times 365.
Right, correct. Right, I told you it's a difficult article if you wanted to read the whole thing. I didn't understand it fully. Right, I want you to see in that article where the concept of 50,000 comes from, what the Ramban was based upon, this Baal Kabbalah. But you're right, to kind of take 1 day and multiply times 365 and then multiply 365 times 7,000 will give you a much larger number. Right.
And then the world was destroyed.
Correct.
You have to assume that that's correct. Why? Because as long as human beings are 6,000 years old, it has to be right.
Because what?
We've been around for hundreds of thousands of years. Our form is not 6,000 years old. Maybe Adam was the first spiritual human being, but we've been around for a long time.
So I guess the question is really where in the scheme of that do we fit in? What year are we in?
Yes.
That's the question that's really probably harder to answer. But the Ramban feels that once again that this is kind of the basis for this concept comes from the Shemitah and Yovel year, which I think you've heard about before. And then here's where the Ramban actually makes one of the clearest references. And he said, bend over your ear to hear what I'm going to tell you, misod zeh b'lashon asher shmi'echa, the words that I'm going to make it clear to you. However, it's not that clear. V'im tisket, and if you're able to, v'im tisket titponen, if you're really able to be zochad, be worthy, you'll understand. Kfar kosafti, and here's where he says it black and white. Kfar kotafti b'seder breshit. I already wrote in discussing in the creation story, ki sheshit yemei breshit hem yemot olam. The 6 days of creation really represent the actual creation of the world. Each of the 6 days really becomes a template for the entire length of the world itself. And the Ramban discusses this as well in certain of his drashot that he has. And v'yom hashvi Shabbat l'Hashem Elokecha. And the 7th day of Shabbos will be also the Shabbat Hashem, which means Kivo Yeh Shabbat LeHashem Agadol. It'll be the Shabbat that everybody will recognize what the Almighty is, so that the world will exist for this long period of time, which is like the world, like the weekday that we have, the weekdays that we have, and then at the very end we will come to a time of Shabbat that everybody will recognize what the Almighty is in the same way Shabbat you recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kamo Sheshaninu, as the Chazal understand this. So in other words, there'll be 6,000 years, is really what he's saying. Each day equals 1,000 years, or each year equals 1,000 years, is the way we're trying to understand it. A day is like equal to a year, and a year equals 1,000 years. And as a result, Bashvi Mahayu Omrim, what would they say on the 7th day, or the 7,000th year? Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos L'Atid Lavo Shekulo Shabbatim Nuchol Chaylamim. So this is what Chazal say, that when we say Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, doesn't mean that we're going to sing it on the Shabbat itself, like the simple meaning, but the hidden meaning is the day of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be a 1,000-year day, which will be completely Shabbat and Menucha L'Chai Olamim. That's supposed to happen in that 7,000th year, but it gets a little more complex. If we work with 7,000, yes, then it's going to be 7,000 years. Correct. So what year are we now?
5779.
5779. So all you got to do is hang in for another. How many?
1,300 years.
No, not even.
No. 200 and something. 230 something.
When you get to 6,000, then you turn to 7th year. You have a 1,000-year rest, the time of Mashiach. Okay, that's what this means. In other words, you don't have to make it to 7,000. You're just going to make it to 6,000. Okay.
Oh, that's much easier.
Because 0 to 1,000. 0 to 1,000 is the first day. 1,000 to 2,000 the second day, 20,001 to 3,000 the third day, and so forth. When you get to 6,000, you have finished the end of the 6th day. Okay? So therefore, so it's really the template or the hidden meaning behind what Shemitah is all about this. V'hine, I'm just going to read this further because it gets a little more complex. V'hine hayamim remez la'asher borab maseh breshit. Now here's where the Ramban kind of triples the numbers, or actually more than triples the numbers. So therefore, the days of the week equal to the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu made maseh breshit. Okay, v'hashanim yirmazu la'asher yeh bebriat kol yimei olam. However, the years are now going to equal to the creation of the entire world. So in other words, what this can mean, it's not clear even in the Ramban how to understand this. The 7 days of the week talk about the actual Maseh Breshit. The years referred to the creation of the world. So the same way there was 6 days and the 7th day of rest. So it means that there'll be 6,000 years and a 1,000th year of the rest or recognizing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And some people have explained that actually what it means here about the days referring to Maseh Breshit and the years referring to Briat Olam. Some say what the Ramban is here referring to is not the 7,000, but as we saw last week, the Ramban believes there were 7,000s. So that what the Ramban is trying to say here, that the first 6 days of creation are really representing 7,000 years, which is the Shemitah cycle. And then you have 7 Shemitah cycles, the Shanim. You've got now 7 Shanim, is now representing the ultimate completeness of the world, which is 7 times 7, 49,000, and then you have a 50,000th year of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we're not quite sure what it means.
Yeah, so I'm confused between the article you sent and now. So, are we in? Who is saying we're in either of the second?
So the Ramban,
which is.
So here's what the Ramban is saying. The Ramban is saying that the Ramban believes that there were two cycles going on here.
Yeah.
There's a 7,000-year cycle, and then there are 7 of those 7,000 cycles.
And where are we in that?
So now, that's the question. We don't know where we are in that second.
Which 7 we are?
So we might. So it's tricky, right? You thought you all thought you only got 200 and X number of years. You might have now 7,200 years. You might have 14,000 and some 200 years. You might have 21,000.
At that point, to a person who's so finite, it doesn't make a difference. It's like the kid whose teacher said the sun is going to explode in 1 billion years. And the kid started to panic, and he said, "When?" She said, 1 billion years. He said, "I got scared. I thought you said 1 million years." No, it's not a lot. The point is, we're far from it no matter what.
Right. Correct. So we're not close enough that
It's 200 years.
Correct. So even if the bomb is 100 years from now, it's not going to make a difference. Correct. We're not, unless we suddenly have a long arichas yomim v'shanim, where we're blessed with longevity that no one can imagine, and science comes up with some kind of, key to suspended animation to put you in a cooler and pull you out in a couple hundred years, we're not going to see this.
That's only the Ita. We can do something about it.
Yes, but I guess correct. So the Ramban doesn't deal with the fact of how you can modulate this. Can you bring Mashiach quicker? Ramban seems to say that this is set. I don't know how to match those two pieces together. But what the Ramban is saying, here's what the Ramban is saying is basically this idea of a Shemitah sabbatical, and 7 Shemitahs make a Jubilee, has got an underpinning to what the world is. What does this really mean? This is why the Shemitah year is so important. Not because the Shemitah year is important for not working the land. Not because the Shemitah year you recognize God gave us the land of Israel. It's really about recognizing this is the template of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The same way Shabbat is important, not because Shabbat is important because you don't work on Shabbat. Shabbat is important because the value behind it, you recognize there was a God who made the world. So if I rest on Shabbat, it's not only the fact that there is a mitzvah, there an aveiro, whatever this is. It's not about doing mitzvahs and aveirot. It's not about doing what I can do. The underpinning of Shabbat, it goes back to the story of creation. So if I remember Shabbat, I remember creation. If I remember Shabbat, I remember people being slaves and being free, and I'm free, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made me free. He took me out of Mitzrayim. So the value behind gives it validity. The value behind the Shabbatical year and the Jubilee year gives validity to what the world is. By keeping these cycles, I'm recognizing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a whole plan of what the world is. In my mindset, I realize that this is not simply random world that goes on forever. There is a plan from the beginning of time to the end of time. I may be a dot, but I've got to do something in the world because the world is constantly moving along according to some master plan that I have no idea what it really is. I can't see the big plan. I can't see 50,000 years. I can't even see 7,000 years. I can see what was. I have no idea where it goes, but I know that there is a purpose here, and there's something is set in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. And so that's the key to it. For all that we don't understand, the value is that there's a plan going on here, and that's what the Ramban says. And therefore, this is why when the words of the Tokva, the words of the reproof, that's actually going to be next week's Parsha, and it says one of the things that will get us exiled from the land of Israel is not keeping the Shemitah. So why is it so important about keeping Shemitah? Why is it such a value? Why is it more, like I can understand worshiping idols is a bad thing. I can understand promiscuity is a bad thing. And I can understand murder is a bad thing. These are cardinal values. But why is Shemitah worse than anything else? Why does the Tocha say if I don't keep the Shemitah, God is going to throw me out of the land? Says the Ramban, because why is this word Yoter Mikol Chayvilav Mechiv Agolot Olel Kmo Shechmir Barayot? In the same way that God said we were in earlier in chapter 18 that if you don't keep don't keep the laws of prohibited relationships, God will throw you out. So why is it going to have in the next week's parsha in chapter 26? It's going to say Oz Tertzeh Oz Shabtotel. If you didn't keep the Shemitah, the land will throw you out, and then the land will lie fallow because no one's there, and it'll make up all the Shemitahs you didn't do. And it says it many times in chapter 26 in next week's parsha. It says that because we didn't keep the Shemitah, we will be thrown out, and the land will get to make up all the lost Shemitahs. It says it in verse 34. It says it in verse 35. Kol Yimei Hashama Tishkod. All the lands of destruction, the land will rest. It says V'nemar B'Har Teozev Mehem V'Tiretz Shabsotel. In verse 43, it says the land will be abandoned and will carry out all the Shemitah years that it didn't was. And the same thing it says in Pirkei Avot, Galut Ba'inu Edin V'Avid Ivot Adin V'Shmita Ta'aretz. Then Pirkei Avot in chapter 5 in the Ethics of the Father says exile happens because people didn't keep justice and people twist the judgment. I understand that's a reason to be thrown out of the land. You can't build a society. And because we didn't keep Shemitah. Why? Because if you don't keep the Shemitah, you're denying the creation story, and you're denying the fact that there's this world and there's a world to come. Okay?
No, sorry. Are you not still keeping Shemitah if you, I hate to use the expression to get around it.
Yes.
Are you not still in fact keeping Shemitah?
Yes.
When a person sells his chametz,
we mentioned that. So the answer is yes, you are. In the same way that you are, yes, keeping Shabbat by having your food in the refrigerator, or how you're keeping Shabbat by putting your food on a cholent pot.
Right.
Yes, there are ways to keep food hot, and there's ways to kind of work with Shemitah. The question is that the way to work around the Shemitah? I said there are different mechanisms today that besides selling the land, there's hydroponics.
Right.
There's also what's called Otzar Beitin, where the land is still owned by the Jews, but they're really working for a communal Beitin that is in charge of really looking after it. And I'm not sure exactly the particulars, but that does not entail selling the land to the non-Jews. But the question is, whatever mechanism you take, you're still concerned enough about the Shemitah to follow the laws of the Shemitah. Well, because assuming it's correct, and it's a big discussion whether this is valid or not. Assuming you assume it's valid, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says Amen. The same way he answers Amen to when you make the bracha on your children.
Shemitah is really a proxy for denial of God.
Right.
That's its proxy.
Well, because it's a proxy to represent the whole story of the world. Shemitah is a microcosm of the story of the world. In the same way the Ramban would tell you the story of the patriarchs is a microcosm of the story of the Jewish people. The same way the creation of the world is a microcosm of 7,000 years. The whole Shemitah year is a microcosm of the 7,000 years. The Shemitah plus the Yovel is a microcosm of the world. Now, how to tie in the microcosm to what happens and why it's 7 years and what specifics are, the Ramban does not go into. But in other words, it's not simply a random sequencing that we're just choosing once every 7 years. It happens to be Shabbat is 7 years and Shemitah year is 7 years. The number 7 really gets connected to the microcosm of the length of time of the world.
How can you say that Shemitah is worse than Arayos? Arayos is one of the 3 capital.
I did not say worse. I said it is as important. It's compounded.
It's not. We have 3 capital sins. There is nothing more than that.
It's worse.
Or equal to that.
It's equal to being thrown out of the land of Israel.
The
Ramban is saying
it comes to be thrown out of the land.
Yes, the Ramban says when you look in Parshat Emor, it talks about if you don't keep the Arayot, the land will barf you out. And then it says in next week's Parsha, it talks about if you don't keep the Shemitah, the land will grab back a Shemitah, you'll be exiled, and the land will take a Shemitah back. They're not the same.
Understand that land is a special land.
Right. So you and I would all say, yes, but isn't Arayot, the laws of sexuality, is not more valid or more important than the laws of Shemitah?
Not when it comes to the land.
Not just when it comes to land. The answer is yes. However, Shemitah is also important because that's denying the validity of the whole story of creation. That's what the Ramban is saying. You're right. It does not compare to the big 3 cardinal sins, but somehow because of this shot of what the Shemitah really represents, it therefore becomes symbolic of the whole creation story.
It doesn't so much deny the creation; denies the Hashem's continued involvement in providing us with what we need.
And the Shemitah, the story of creation is not just about creating a land; it's about creating a land which created a people, which created Av Nivchar, a Eretz Nivchar, the chosen people, the chosen land. If you don't carry that through, the land has no purpose for you. Okay, let's just finish this up. And the same thing you find in Yirmiyahu. That Yirmiyahu says that he talks about the Jews would be going to Galut if they wouldn't send their slaves they'll go out on the Shemitah year. I'm not sure what that means. Anochi karati brita tavotechem. I said a covenant with your fathers. You should let the slaves go out after 70 years. It doesn't really mean the Shemitah year, because letting slaves go out, or Hebrew indentured servant, was after 7 years. And then that's what the pasuk continues and says. He doesn't mean that the pasuk call Hashem. You'll go out with the sword. So all of this is all about the Shemitah year following the cycle of really what the world is. And then the rest of this piece is a little bit complex, and they don't really translate it well because it goes into heavy Kabbalah. So he says, Kigam be'eved shvit kayovel shelo, because for the Eved, the 7 years of working as an Eved is almost like his Yovel. Vayovel yivoda od mi breshit ay vaychulu. The Yovel year is like from the beginning of creation till vayechulu ki yeshuva bayovel kol ish al achuzato v'yisham mishpachto. And this, and he goes on, which I'm really going to stop because I'm not really sure I can really understand what this is.
So the Shemitah year started when the Torah was given. Is that correct?
So the Shemitah year starts when the Torah is given, yes, or when they get to Jewish, when they get to Eretz Yisrael.
But we're talking about the beginning of time
When they get-
and the end of time, and
So why does it not go back to year
beginning,
zero?
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, why didn't he keep it?
It's only in Israel. It's only in Israel. It's only in
It's
Israel.
only in Israel.
My question, Moshe, is Shemitah is so important that I'm learning this for the first time in the last few weeks. And we all as Jews are supposed to follow Shabbos, fine. So why don't we follow Shemitah and do nothing for 1 year on the 7th year? It's such an important part of our lives, important part of connection to Hashem. Why don't we take the year off?
Why don't we take a sabbatical year? Or why doesn't the whole country shut down?
Something like that.
The answer is it's not a halachic country. He's talking about why doesn't Israel shut down? Are you asking why you don't shut down, or why doesn't Israel shut down?
All of us. Just like we follow Shabbos, we're in Galut, we have to follow Shabbos, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we have to follow Shabbos here.
But
So why aren't we following Shemitah
Because
here too? Anywhere.
it's applicable to working the land. It's a land law. And most of the land laws that we have are applicable to the land of Israel. There are a few exceptions, but about 95% of all the laws that apply to land apply to the land. And this is not the land that we belong to, we should be. We're only temporarily here. We don't belong here in this country. The seasons don't match up with the seasons of Israel. The laws don't match up with the laws of Israel. First fruits are not first fruits. The planting season, the harvesting season, Tu B'Shvat has nothing to do with anything about Israel. There's got snow on the ground here. That's why it does not apply, because everything agricultural lands applies to the land.
And in Israel, it doesn't apply. They don't have Shemitah every 7 years.
They do have Shemitah every 7
business?
years. Not for business, but that's because it's not a business law. It's a law about land.
Okay, but there's land and they go hand in hand.
So the answer is that the halachic kibbutz will follow those kind of laws. Right? It's very difficult. That's why they try to come up with mechanisms to work around it, like using hydroponics. You have to understand, keeping the laws of the Torah does not mean that we live in a cave. The same way you have to work in the concept, the same way that Shabbat does not mean that you have to have cold food. Doesn't mean that you have to turn off your refrigerator and let your food spoil. It means that you have certain things that we've enabled autopilots, that things work on their own. We have a refrigerator, we have hot trays, we have ways to warm food up. We have chillum pots, we have crock pots. Doesn't mean that we have to live in difficulty. So using halacha is trying to make halacha apply to the challenges we have in a modern society. So living in a modern society, for example, you can't work the land. One alternative is to build a system of hydroponics, where you're really not working off the land, you're not working on the land, you're working off the land. You say, oh, it's not getting around the law. It's not getting around the law. It's making the law work for you. Okay. So in other words, yes, they should really do that. The problem is, this was always the difficulty when the Jews came back in the late 1800s. It was difficult to build a society that could work that way. They looked for certain heterums, when the heterum was about selling the land to a guy. There are other mechanisms today, which we've tried to talk about very briefly. So at any rate, this is what the Ramban really says in terms of what the Shemitah is. And if you kind of try to understand the Ramban more, he's really talking about the Shemitah being the 7,000 and the Yovel year being the 50,000. And the very end of this piece, he comes back to it. I just wanted the last two lines of this Ramban. Maybe this is what the rabbis mentioned when they said, there were 50 levels of understanding that were made in this world, and they were all given to Moshe, except the final one. He called Shemitah Shar Bat Echad, because each Shemitah is one level, like one step. Not translating, maybe translating the English there. Each one is a step, and after all they're done, you reach the 50th level, besides the final Yovel, which is really talking about where everybody will know HaKadosh Baruch Hu and recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Question, what happens at the end of these 50,000 years? What's going to happen? Does the world implode? Does the world go back to zero? Is there a reset? Is there a reset at the end of every 7,000 years? That's not very clear to us. Okay?
Did you say it has anything to do with the coming of Mashiach?
Well, yes, the coming of Mashiach, according to Ramban, will be at the end of 50,000 years.
When's the Mashiach?
I have to wait that long?
Well, this is what Dan said. This is what Dan said. Can we accelerate the process? Ramban doesn't seem to mix the two. How you can accelerate the process with the numbers of the years that are set up, but he does believe you can accelerate the process.
But what happened? What happened when Mashiach come? Mashiach come the regular. We live the regular.
What do you mean, Chana?
Oh, okay.
Rambam said the Mot Mashiach they like every day regular. There's nothing special.
So maybe the Ramban doesn't agree with that. There's a lot of things that are very.
Life is going to be the same, you're saying?
Same, yeah. Just everybody know Jewish is a nation. Nivhar.
That's not what I've read. I've read that the jealousies and all this stuff will be gone.
Yeah.
Life won't be the same.
No, but the existence will be as existence. Correct.
You exist like existence. You go to work. Do anything. Do so.
Yes.
Yeah.
The halachas that you kept before, you have to still keep after.
Yeah. It's not be something I don't know in the hand. Not in the moon.
It's going to be a better place.
Mm-hmm.
People are going to hate each other, kill each other. There's going to be love. People will know Hashem. I sound like a preacher.
Correct. All right. So that's the basic piece of the Ramban. The Ramban actually, just one brief piece in the next Ramban in Pasuk Gimel. The Ramban says, what would be the alternative to not keeping the Shemitah? Not keeping the Shemitah. So in other words, the Ramban actually quotes from the Medrash Agad that Mechilta actually says that if you work the land for 6 years, what are you going to do in the seventh? You rest. What would happen what's the alternative? What's the plan B? What would it be if you don't keep it this way? So you say you'd keep working. It's not, Ramban says it's not really true. If you didn't keep the Shemitah, you'd actually have more Shemitahs that you'd be forced to keep because you alternate when you plant the farmland, so you'd end up having really 4 Shemitahs in a 7-year cycle. In other words, because you need to let the land recoup on its nutrients, so you'd plant for 1 year, not plant for 1 year, plant for 1 year, not plant for 1 year, plant for 1 year, not plant for 1 year. You rotate crops. So therefore, says the Ramban, the reality is what the Torah is telling us here, by work for 6 years and you'll keep the 7th year Shemitah, that sounds like they go together. It says if you wouldn't keep the Shemitah, like the inverse, then you would end up keeping 4 Shemitahs in the sabbatical cycle. The 2nd, the 4th, the 6th, and the 7th, or the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th. So you'd be rotating crops. The promise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, if you keep the Shemitah, I will ensure that your land will be fruitful enough and will have additional nutrients built into the soil that will be able to let the land work for 6 years straight, and on the 7th year you will go back, you will have to keep a Shemitah year. So that's the key to that piece of Ramban itself. So that's in terms of just the Ramban. Just one final word, and then we'll take a break here. What does the word Yovel mean? What does the word Jubilee mean? I understand Yovel, Jubilee. That's just a transliteration of the word Yovel. It's like saying, what's the word of Azov is Hyssop. What's the word? I'm sorry? What does the word mean? At the end of 49th year, 50th year, it's called be Yovel. What?
Anniversary commemoration of some event.
Where does it come from?
It's the end, no?
Yovel is the end?
And I think so.
No. Okay.
Yovel. Where do you see Yovel?
So the Ramban offers a number of alternatives, and I'll just see if I can find them quickly. It's in Pasuk number 10, I believe. I'm not going to do the whole Ramban today because we want to take the break. But the Ramban seems to say that the Yovel year, he gives a number of interpretations. This should be Yovel. This is verse 10. Is it verse 10? It is verse 10. Okay, so the Ramban quotes the first interpretation that Yovel, the Jubilee year, refers to the actual blowing of the horn.
Nivdal.
Right, well, first he says, Nivdala, the land is separated, the year is separated. So he says, Yovel, according to Rashi, means separate. Okay, and therefore Yovel is a name for being separate. What makes it separate? It's separate from sounding the shofar. So the Yovel, which is Jubilee, the term Yovel is another term for the shofar that is used, and that's why it's called the Yovel year. Yovel is the blowing of the shofar that is sounded on Yom Kippur of the Yovel year. So Rashi and others seem to say the word Yovel is really calling it the horn year, the year of the horn. Okay, the Yovel, and we find this in many cases where the Gemara talks about Shofrot and Yeshofrat HaYovlim. These are the ram's horn is called a Yovel, and he brings a number of examples where this comes out. So the second thing that Raman says, he doesn't like that. He says the word Yovel actually comes from the idea of freedom. In other words, the word Jubilee year is another word for dror, which means freedom. It says, "Ukrotem dror bo'aretz," you'll call freedom. The Yovel is the year in which the freedom is. So Yovel really becomes related to the same root as actually freedom itself. And says that that's the second interpretation. And the third interpretation, which is really related to the second interpretation, that the Jubilee year is also about going to your place. Not just about freedom, but freedom, people will return to their lands itself. So they will return to where they're coming from. So people will return to where we come from. And the Ramban actually kind of ties in a little bit in this. That's really what happens on the Jubilee year. If the Jubilee year represents 50,000 years, what will happen in the final Jubilee year, that final 50,000th year? We will return, the world will return around to back where it started from and start all over again. So he's got the three things, but the most important thing I think from this Ramban is that taking the word Yovel does not mean the horn, but Yovel actually is another word for freedom and going back to where people came from and releasing the free slaves and allowing people to go back to their ancestral lands. That is what the meaning of the Jubilee means. That's what the meaning of the word Yovel is. We want to take a 5-minute break and then we'll go to the second half of this.
Like when a guy goes back to his original land.
Yeah.
But if you take a look at Eretz Yisrael right now, I never realized that the government, in fact, owns most of the land.
Government, the church.
The church owns a lot of land too.
I have a handout that we'll do together about Otzei Beit. And first, I want to just tell you what it is. So selling the land is just selling the land. You're selling land to a guy. We sell. Otzei Beit Din? No, we don't do Otzei Beit Din for Pesach. No, we don't know what Otzei Beit Din is. We do Mechirat Chametz for Pesach. And even Mechirat Chametz, not everybody sells real Chametz. They don't sell Chametz Ben. Some people don't sell like bread or pastas. They may sell whiskeys because it's Hefsid Muba, but they're probably not going to sell, in many cases, real bread. Bread you burn, right? Cakes you burn, cookies you burn. You don't save over Pesach and put aside. Some people do, some people don't. The one way that they've developed for about over a century was the Heter Mechira. We talked about this briefly, where they would form a contract and they would sell the land to a non-Jew. The non-Jew would buy the land. Everybody would sign on the contract, or they'd give a hashad to the Rabbanut to sell, and that's what was done. The issues with Heter Mechira was, can you actually sell the land? Can you legally sell the land? No, you can sell your chametz. It's your chametz to do with whatever you want to do. But can you actually sell the land of Eretz Yisrael? Is it ideal? Does it work?
Can you rent it out? Can you rent it or just rent it?
Well, does it take off the kedusha of Shvit? What's the status of that? Second of all,
for the year.
Can you actually rent out the land? We may not be able to rent out the land either because it's lo techanein. You should not let the Jewish people, should not let non-Jews get a foothold in Eretz Yisrael. So first of all, this question is whether you can sell, whether it's proper to sell, whether it's ideally proper to sell. Then there's the whole ideological thing. Do you really believe that you're selling? Who believes that they're selling the land to a goy? With my chametz, as high as the stakes are, it's very low stakes. I'm not selling my diamonds. I'm not selling my bank accounts. I'm selling my chametz. How much chametz do I have? Even assuming they clean out my liquor cabinet, my losses are fairly limited. But selling the land of Eretz Yisrael, who would really sell the land of Eretz Yisrael? So there was a concept developed called. I'm sorry.
The Arabs steal it.
Right, the Arabs steal it. We're fighting against the Arabs. So what the Otzei Beit Din really was developed, and I'll tell you when it started in a moment. It's basically a distribution system set up by a Beit Din, set up by a rabbinic court, and the Beit Din hires the farmers themselves as agents to work for the Beit Din. So in other words, there's nothing wrong with my asking you to go into your field or someone's field and bring me produce. But I can work my own field. So the farmers are hired to engage only in activities that are permitted during the Shemitah year. Therefore, they can they can water the trees to ensure they don't die. They can pick the fruit. They can't fertilize the trees. They can't do a lot of things that they normally do during the year. The Beit Din is now the real distribution system. They're rehiring the farmers to work the fields, which the Beit Din is looking after. The Beit Din sets up a distribution system to manage and distribute the produce. The Beit Din is not making a profit off of the system. In other words, that's the whole idea, is not to do schor, not to really do business. So the Beit Din can set a price that will cover the expenses involved in executing this kind of distribution system. So they'll pay the farmers, they'll pay the middlemen as a fee, and it's a way where if it's properly organized, and properly supervise that fruit and food and produce that's sold in an Otzer Beitin system. And it's not simply just a rubber stamp kind of process. If the fruit has Kedushat Shvi'it, you have to make sure that you don't do the prohibited activities in the fields. You have to set it's a highly controlled system of setting the conditions and setting the prices of what the fruit is. So that's really what it is. It actually goes back, I'll tell you the origins of it, and then we'll go through a handout. The origins goes back to 1910. In 1910, this I didn't know until I read it last night. In 1910, there was a farmer by the name of Tzvi Hirsch Cohen who lived in Rehovot. He was a Talmud Chacham who lived in Rehovot. He owned vineyards and orchards, and he came to the Rabbanim of Yerushalayim in 1910, 56-70, in requesting that they function as a Beit Din to distribute the wine and distribute the fruit from his orchards for the coming Shemitah. In other words, it's there. The stuff is growing. But he can't really work it he can't really sell it. So they wrote a contract, and the contract actually apparently still exists today. It was signed by Rav Chaim Berlin. It was signed by Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who we saw in the other day. It was signed by Rav Pesach Frank. It was signed by two other Rabbanim as well, Rav Moshe Nachum Wallerstein, Rav Yisrael Yaakov Yavitz. In order to so that's what he was giving over to the Beit Din to be able to look after and to distribute the stuff that would come from his orchard. Now,
Is this as a chesed or
well, as in other words, yeah, they're looking after it. He can't make a profit. What they did, on the other hand, they said in order to enable the residents of Yerushalayim, this is the first time it was done, in order to enable the residents of Yerushalayim to receive the fruit and wine from Rav Cohen's orchards, someone had to arrange to harvest the fruit, process the grapes into wine, and transport the products to Yerushalayim. So they decided, seeing that the owner, not the owner, but Rav Cohen himself is the most qualified person to do so they appointed him as their representative to take care of these arrangements. So it sounds like a kickback system, but it's really not. It's very highly controlled. The Beit Din is distributing it, but they can't do it. They're sitting in Beit Din. They're saying this is, so they hire a farmer who's going to look after this. In this case, they hire the farmer himself. So he's seeing Rav Cohen was the most qualified person to take care of this. So they appointed him as their representative to harvest, to process the produce, and transport to Yerushalayim. As an agent of the Beit Din, he's entitled to be paid. Right? He's working for the Beit Din. The Beit Din can't make a profit, but the Beit Din is allowed to hire people to, deliver what needs to be delivered, to take care of the things that need to be taken care of. So he could. So he's. Beit
Din allowed to be land, no Shemitah on it.
No, it has Kedusha Shemitah, but they can't do. They're not doing it as a business. They're simply they're standing in place of all the people who would want to go into the land who can't get into the land. They're going on their behalf. If you have a Shemitah land and I can go in, but if I can't get there, I can ask someone else to go in for me. In other words, I live here in Yerushalayim, and you have a land in Rehovot, and it's Shemitah, so I'm allowed to go there, but I can't get to your land. So I can ask someone else to go to your land to get this stuff from me. I'm not really.
This guy that own the land.
Yes.
Do anything in the land, all the Shemitah, everything.
Not many things in the land, not everything in the land. He can't, right. But he can be paid for his work. He can hire employees. They can harvest. They can crush. They can package. They can transport the crop, and no one is entitled to any profits on the produce.
How about Maratayim?
I'm sorry.
How about Maratayim?
What?
I understand.
Look at the sign.
So it's not Marasayim because when the produce is sold, it has a big sign. It's an Otzer Beit Din.
No, but when he works the land.
So it's Marasayim like anyone else who's coming into the land to harvest. If you come into my land, if I have a field and it's open, and you can come in and you start coming to take the stuff for yourself, why is that not Marasayim either? It's not a Marasayim to go into a field to produce it. It's a Marasayim that you're going to be making a profit off what the produce is being done.
But the neighbors see him that he does the same thing like he does every year.
So I guess they didn't do everything the same year. Didn't fertilize, for example. I guess they didn't feel it was a Marasayim. I guess they didn't feel it was a Marasayim. Look, it's not without its detractors. It's not like
allowed fertilize.
They could not fertilize the field. No, they could not fertilize it because that would be improving the crops.
Only one.
Right. So they made certain rules to make sure that the laws of Shemitah were set up very carefully. And I'll read you the laws of the Beit Din in 1910, and then we'll kind of come down to what happens today.
We're not allowed also spray for the bug?
I don't know. Probably not. But in other words, they're hiring Rav Cohen, who's, let's see, the owner of the orchards is this Rav Cohen, Rav Hirsch Cohen, in 1910. They're hiring him to manage and do the management work, not as the owner of the product. They predetermine the price the consumer would pay for the wine, which would be lower than the actual market value. So it's almost meant like to say they're representing the consumers who can't get to the field, but all they're doing is they're taking the cost of their labor. Let's break it down to the simplest way. I live in Jerusalem. Your field is in Rehovot. Your field is open, but I can't get to your field. So I ask Hanoch to go to Rehovot. I can pay Hanoch for his gas. I can pay Hanoch for his time. I'm not paying him to harvest. I'm paying him to time because he's bringing the stuff for me. He doesn't have to go for free. I can pay him to go to bring the stuff for me. So same way, everything that Rav Hirsch Cohen was being done, and anyone who he hired was really just simply recouping the losses of their time and the work they're doing. So it's a little bit. It is a haram. It's a way to get around it, but it's a way that legally seems to work.
And the taxes and all that stuff.
What taxes? Sale taxes?
Yeah, I mean, you're still paying him, you're still selling.
Was he still paying taxes? Well, you pay taxes anything you make. If you pay taxes, the taxi driver pays taxes for his time. Yes, Rafael?
Before this arrangement, the produce of the land is hefty, right? So you can go in and just take it.
Right.
Okay, so what this arrangement did was to make it easier for people to get it.
Correct.
So that was a chesed.
Correct, but
it's a chesed,
but
my land is just going to sit there and Rehovot. It's an obscure
correct,
area.
but every chesed organization does have an overhead.
No, I understand, but it's based on a chesed. It's not based on trying to get around and really making money, but not.
That's correct. In fact, the prices are set. The prices are based upon what the real costs are.
Which in every other year, a whole different system would be in place.
That's correct.
He would organize the distribution and all of that stuff.
Right.
But because he couldn't do that, he got the bait in to do it.
Correct. So let me just it was a very clever idea when it was done in 1910, and it's actually probably in the last 20 years it has taken off and expanded many places. So he had a couple of safeguards put in place. They can only distribute the wine and the fruit to people who are shomer shmita, who were careful about shmita. It wasn't like an open system, like you walk into Sobeys or Metro and anyone buys it off of the bins. It was like you had to be known and clarified that you wanted to keep the shmita. Number two, the vineyards and the orchards had to be open for anyone to walk in and actually take the produce by themselves. They couldn't keep people out. So while they may have had a distribution center to bring it to people in Yerushalayim, anyone could walk in off the street or off of the road to be able to take it. Number three, the products were not distributed through stores, but was divided as a communal district of a bulk product. They were not weighed, they were not measured, they were done more of eyeball it. Each individual participated in dividing the Shemitah produce, paid Rav Cohen as the basin's agent, for which the consumer was entitled to shares of wine and produce that were delivered in bulk containers without any exact weight. So it wasn't even done as really a real deal, as a real sale, like you pay per pound or per kilo. It was just an estimate of what it was. In this case, the actual harvest of the crops was done by non-Jews, and it was done in a different way than they normally harvested it. Later, the Chazon Ish, when he looked at this, and the Chazon Ish later ruled that in this kind of situation, even a Jew may be able to work the land, may be able to do the actual produce. I think they still have to do it in somewhat of a shinoi. So a modern Otzar Beit Din and a modern farm, which is following the Chazon Ish's ruling, would allow the Jewish staff to use the combines to harvest and process the Shemitah's produce. And I think the Chazon Ish even allowed sometimes some weighing and measuring of the produce. So this was, the first time it was done was in 1910. Now, in the modern Otzar Beit Din, and then once again, I never really lived through this, because when I spent the year in Israel, 1972-73, it was a Shemitah year, but at that point they had Heter Mechira, not Heter Mechira. I was once visiting for a few weeks, and people tried to explain it to me. I didn't know what it was really. The Otzar Beit Din, the modern Otzar Beit Din, the grower plants everything before Shemitah. You don't plant on Shemitah, and is given very detailed instructions regarding what he can and what he can't do during Shemitah. The grower has to allow any Shemitah observant person to enter the field and the orchard. Usually the farmer, the grower, has agreed in advance to the price of his product, which he's going to receive regardless of the quality of the product. In other words, you're going to be so much per apple, or so much is, I guess, for each apple, or for the apples, you're going to be paid for the field. If the apples are wormy, too bad. If the apples are A double plus, it's going to be, whatever it is, it's the same price. And the grower understands that the price is not a purchase of the product. It's not a purchase of the produce, but it's compensation for his out-of-pocket expenses. That's the Yotzer Beit Din. So they run as a separate kind of organization. They have a separate market where they're going to distribute this produce.
And who's controlling all of it? Who's policing this?
Who's policing the Beit Din? The Beit Din will have the Beit Din.
The Beit Din doesn't even have time to go to the farm to pick it.
Well, they hire people. I don't mean the old rabbi sitting behind them in the learning of this measures. What does the COR do?
Because I can see some rich guy saying, go to that guy's farm over there and bring it all to me, and I'll sell it for a profit. That's what they say.
Yeah, but that's why this is a way to. It's like a cooperative. It's like a cooperative. Who polices a cooperative? Who polices a cooperative? That each person works with the other.
The cooperative is doing it as a business.
Okay.
This is not a business.
This is not a business. This is a way for the farmer to be able to recoup his losses and to be able to stay in business. It's not the same as really running for a profit. You're right.
But I don't understand. You have a town over there that the Beit Din can't get to.
They send someone there. They send someone.
No, what I'm saying is, why doesn't that farm just supply their own local people?
Because then they'd be selling.
And each one does it locally.
Like a local Beit Din. Yeah, so they maybe they have a local Beit Din they would use. Maybe if there's a farm in Rehovot, they would use the Beit Din in Rehovot. I'm not sure the exact how far the distribution is, how national, how regional it is. There are different Batei Dinim, and different Batei Dinim will have different people who go out in the field. When you get matzah, shmura matzah, and the shmura matzah, people watching it when it's harvested, who do you think goes out there? There are people, representatives of the basin, who go out to the fields when they're harvesting the wheat. Not just to make sure that the wheat is not becoming wet, to make sure the conditions are perfect. They don't want the wheat they don't want it to come right after rain, because then it's going to get wet right away. They don't want it to be too dry. They wait for just the right time. You read the stories, the farmer is plotting. The farmer is contracted, he's going to sell all this wheat to some little bakery in a place through Brooklyn. Or whatever it is, a group of bakeries, and the mashgichim come out and they tell him, farmer, you gotta wait. It's not this. The farmer's concerned. Maybe the conditions would go down, and then he'll lose his crop. His crop will be deteriorated. But they've got to find a proper time to. So their people go out. The people make a living on being mashgichim. Mashgichim is not an easy job. The mashgichim would travel the world.
One time the Montreal Matzah.
Yeah.
Go buy the harvest wheat.
Yeah.
This time, in contract, okay. You can buy. You go, let it dry, rain. You cannot buy.
What's so nice, I have to say, that I always saw Shemitah as kind of like a Pro Bowl, like a way of getting around.
That's
It is getting around.
But if the origin of this is more based on efficient distribution of produce that would be free, then it's not a shtick.
So it works. It works the same way that your Shabbos clock works for Shabbos. Right? I mean, we take it for granted, but you put your clocks on a timer, the time goes off and on. What if you want to change in the middle? You're stuck. Right? What if you set a crock pot and the crock pot is too hot or too cold? You've never had a situation where, in our crock pot there are three settings. One is warm, one is actually low, which is just really just keep it in as a low setting, then a high setting. We've had weeks we forgot to put it on the high setting just to get it going on Friday, and you forgot to turn it back to the low setting, and it got burnt. It was too bad. That's part of Shabbos. They say, but it's you're getting around. You're not getting around Shabbos. Anyways, here's an article.
I was thinking it's more of a like you've got a yeshiva in Israel needs funds.
Yeah.
The Rosh Yeshiva could go, but he's not as efficient necessarily. He doesn't take time away from learning, so he hires a Meshulach to go and do it. And it's a Meshulach. They know how to do it, but it's done efficiently. But its basis is chesed. Its basis is tzedakah.
Right, but the Meshulach is cutting a salary.
Right.
right?
That's right. It's the same thing.
Okay, correct. But anytime, any organization that you're going to give charity and tzedakah to, whether it's a Jewish organization or a general organization, there is an overhead to run to make fundraising. Say, but it's chesed. How are they paying a secretary? How are they paying an executive director? That's the answer is efficiently you've got to run things. So you have the same way you have a COR. COR is a chesed. It's a non-profit organization. It's not a private profit-making organization, but they have. It's not.
Not a profit. Not.
I hope it's not a non-profit. Okay, but
Somebody's making money.
Sure, they're making money, but the money is. Everybody's making money.
Well, I don't know about making a living. Depends what you think making a living is. I don't know.
Only struck you by the pounds.
Okay, anyways, so here's a piece by Rav Aaron Tendler who teaches in Eretz Yisrael. Teaches actually in a high school. He's actually a very big scholar, okay? So this just, he talks about the two things, about the issue, and then he talks about Heter Mechira, and then he talks about the Yotzer Beitin. So he talks about rabbis have taught the Jewish nation would observe two Shabbosos, they would immediately be redeemed. Generally, this is understood to mean that redemption will come if we observe two consecutive Shabbosos. Actually, it's important as a Dvar Torah if you want to keep it in mind. The question arises, what's the significance of two Shabbos? We've heard this before. If you keep two Shabbos, Mashiach will come. So what does it mean? So he quotes in the name of the former chief rabbi of Moscow, Rabbi Fishman, in his introduction to a commentary in Yerushalmi Masechet Shvius. Rabbi Fishman says the two Shabbos refer to the seventh day of the week and the seventh year of Shemitah. So keeping the two Shabbos to bring Mashiach is keeping Shabbos, and keeping the other Shabbos, Shabbos Lashem, which is in Parshas BeHar, which is in this week's Parsha.
Not just the regular Shabbos.
Not the two Shabbos are two types of Shabbos. It doesn't mean two consecutive Shabbos. It means two Shabbos that will happen at the same time. So you would keep the Shabbos, the regular Shabbos, on the Shabbos of the Shabbos Lashem of the land. That's what it means.
I thought we said the two Shabbosim because there are two aspects to Shabbos.
That's what the Nesivos Shalom. That's what Nesivos Shalom says. But he's quoting.
He said that before too.
But he's quoting here. The former chief rabbi of Moscow says it's referring to two things. You can accept this. You cannot accept this. It's not going to detract from the Yotzer Beitin part of the article, but it's good for a Dvar Torah. So those of us who live outside of Eretz Yisrael do not have the opportunity to observe the year, Shematical year, in the manner in which those who live in the land of Israel. However, we all are concerned about the financial security of our brethren and what we can do to help our fellow Jews. The only guarantee we have is to follow what the Torah teaches us. The Torah clearly links the improper keeping of Shemitah with the Golas, our diaspora, and therefore appropriate that especially in the Shemitah year when we're filled with concern for we keep the Shemitah. Now he's going to talk about the kosher methods and problems with keeping Shemitah. By the way, you should not find produce under Hashgacha that is Shemitah produce being sent to diaspora. Be very rare. I don't know if you'd find it. For example, the wine, you're never going to find, I don't say never, you shouldn't be able to find wine in Chutz La'aretz that's wine that was produced with Shemitah. Because even if it was, however it was processed, it has a certain sense of kedusha that should not be degraded by sending outside of Israel. You can buy wine in Israel on Shemitah. You can put it in your suitcase for all we know, right? But you will not find a distributor who's under any hashgacha who will be selling the wine here in the Chutz La'aretz.
So how do you get the strogim here coming from
Israel? So that's a very large discussion because we're including that because the esrogim are actually supposed to be sent back. On the Shemitah year, when they bring esrogim from Israel, they're actually supposed to send them back.
Only the etrogim or some lulavim also.
No, lulav is not. Lulav, maybe lulavim as well. Gemara seems to say lulav has kedusha shvi too. Yes, because the lulav could be used for some kind of purpose. But the hadassim and rav is for sure not. Hadassim also come from Israel sometimes. Anyways, in early generations, so this goes back to the introduction to what it is. In the early generations, when Israel's economy was basically agrarian, the distribution and consumption of Shemitah produce was relatively easy. Although produce may be not picked for sale, it must be made hefker ownless and available to all the farmers permitted to pick for his own fruit for personal consumption, even for that which was grown during Shemitah year. As long as he did not sell the fruit to others or store it in his home past the prescribed time limits. You can't store it past the time when it's no longer available in the fields. You treated the fruit with the proper sanctity. It was perfectly permissible to consume personal produce grown during the Shemitah. The one exception to this was the prohibition of tzvichim, which vegetables which grow by themselves during the Shemitah year, which may not be consumed, there must be uprooted when they're noticed. It's a rabbinic prohibition because they were untrustworthy people who were planting vegetables, so they added this later on, something called an isur tzvichim. So when things were easy, it was fairly easy. Everybody looked after their own field. You walked in, you knew the farmer, you saw it, you could walk in, take it, and it was hefker. Today, however, when Israel's economy is far more industrial and less far agrarian, and far less agrarian, excessive produce during street is much more problematic. Most people do not have a variety of trees in their own backyards. Since street to food would not be marketed, the country needs to be fed. How can the local grocer or supermarket provide their customers with domestic produce during the Shemitah year? So the two solutions are, solution number 2 options. One solution is a bit controversial and problematic. There's a disagreement among the poskim whether fruit grown in Israel and land owned by non-Jews has the holiness of Shemitah. If a non-Jew works the land, does the produce still have Kedusha? I'm not talking about selling it. Is there a Kedusha to the fruit? Now, what does it mean that fruit has Kedusha? If fruit has Kedusha, what does something mean when something has Kedusha? You treat it with respect. What is treating? How do you treat fruit with respect?
Before you eat it.
Yes.
Don't throw in the garbage.
You don't throw in the garbage. Treating food with respect means that if his food is still edible, you can't just trash it. Okay, so the question is, first of all, if a non-Jew works the field of Israel, non-Jew lives in Israel, non-Jew has his own field, does the fruit still have Kedusha if he works it on the Shemitah? Completely independent about me working and not working. Is the land itself going to give the fruit Kedusha just by virtue of the fruit growing on its land? It's a very major discussion. The Chazon Ish says yes, the Mishlaim says no.
I would think that the land is Israel.
Yeah, we think so too.
So it's got Kedusha.
Right.
Whether the guy is working it is non-Jew.
So the Chazon Ish agreed with you. The people in Yerushalayim said no. The only Kedusha happens when a Jew invested with Kedusha. There are two sides on that. So that's one discussion. That's one discussion. The implication will be what...
But everything belongs to Hashem, no?
Right. But you see once again that therefore selling the land may not resolve all the problems. Right. That's number one. Number 2. Furthermore, is it halachically proper to sell Jewish-owned land to non-Jews? Can I sell my land to a non-Jew? The Beis Yosef rules the land may be sold to non-Jews and turn over, and fruit grown land is divested of Kedusha. The Mabit rules that since the fruit grown in Eretz Yisrael is grows in Eretz Yisrael, although the land may be legally owned by a non-Jew, produce is still holy. The custom of Yerushalayim is to rely upon the opinion of Beis Yosef that says it doesn't have Kedusha. We therefore find many supermarkets and fruit stands selling a variety of produce in Yerushalayim that was grown by Arabs in Israel. However, the Chazon Ish is of the opinion that one must follow the opinion of the Mabit, and since Bnei Brak follows the opinion of the Chazon Ish, they do not have this option available to them. Stores in Bnei Brak do not market fruit grown on lands of Arab ownership within the borders of Eretz Yisrael. So in other words, you would have to get land grown by Arabs that was grown out of it even to have not Kedusha of Shvius. Additionally, a problem arises with any arrangement to sell produce grown on Arab-owned lands. First of all, does it take the Kedusha off? Second of all, the honesty and trustworthiness of the growers. Kashrus agencies often have to match with Arab farmers and distributors who will purchase produce from Jewish farmers who do not observe Shemitah, repackage the fruit, and sell the produce to the Kashrus observing public as if they themselves had grown them. So there is no trust, because Arab would want to cheat everybody. So we got to be careful. I don't want to say that as a rule, but they're in it to make money. Without this trust, it can be very burdensome and expensive to make sure that Mashgiach is present from the time of harvest until delivered to the hand of trustworthy storekeepers. So therefore, the what we call the Heter Mechira was problematic, because we don't know, first of all, we take the Kedusha, second of all, they're really selling their own produce or not selling their produce. We really couldn't trust them. So here comes now what he says. The preferred method, therefore, is that of the Otza Beitin. Literally, the storehouse of Beitin. What is that all about? This concept works as follows. Although the Torah forbids marketing the fruits of a Shabbat sabbatically or Shvius, it's clearly permitted to eat them. Not only may the owner pick for his own needs, he may also pick food for a friend who needs, as long as he does not market the food as he normally does. In other words, you have a field, you can pick food for me. You just can't sell me the food. Right? And therefore, so can I hire someone to go into my friend's field and pick fruit for me? Certainly. I can ask you to go to Rechovot, get me the fruit, bring it back to me. I can pay you for your time. I don't have to do it myself. This doesn't violate the law of Shemitah at all, since I'm not buying the fruit, rather I'm paying someone for the labor on my behalf. This is the legal concept that it revolves around. Taken one step further, I can even hire the farmer himself to harvest the fruits for me and pay him a flat hourly fee for his labor, as long as it's clear the money paid is for his labor on my behalf and not a purchase of the fruits for which I'm taking for free. So this is the legal concept it lies upon. Enter the Otza Beitin, prescribed by Tosefta in Masechet Shvius. Based on the above principle, the Beit Din approaches a fruit-growing farmer and hires him to harvest his own fruit for the public in exchange for a flat wage. This agreement stipulates the farmer will transport the fruit to a storehouse rented by the Beit Din, who will distribute the fruit to the public. The Beit Din is then permitted to pass on to the consumer the expenses in making these fruits accessible to the public.
So why Beit Din? Somebody else.
Yeah, but then if you do that, you may end up really working for yourself.
No, I don't work. I choose somebody else work for me.
Because by creating a non-profit organization will self control itself. You know what? This is like there's a what am I calling it? There is a movement in Israel that you go to stores sometimes. They ask you ask, are you kosher? They say yes. They say, whose tuda are you on? They say my own.
Who's what?
Whose certificate do you have? They say their own. They're self-supervising themselves. What's the problem with self-supervising yourself? You tend not to be as honest when you're in a pinch. So having a communal organization tends to keep certain sets and checks and balances. So
It's honesty. It's also knowledge too.
Knowledge, honesty, correct. I'm saying, but I've actually seen that. We travel in Eretz Yisrael, and you ask, do you see a tudah? We've gotten a response because you don't know the place. You want to see who's tudah, and the guy said, I don't have a tudah because I'm open on Shabbat, but I watch myself to make sure I'm kosher. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know.
The person really allowed to trust me. So I'm kosher, but I don't have. Can trust me.
So the answer is, if you were to invite me to your house, I would trust you. But when you're running a business and there's always opportunities to cut corners, and you may not be knowledgeable completely, right? Then it may not be true. You may not be knowledgeable to look on the ingredients as carefully as a mashgiach would be. It's all, and the opportunity to cheat. My father used to tell us a story when he was a little kid. He grew up in Camden, New Jersey. And he was Shomer Shabbos like everybody else was, and he had a summer job working in one of these busser delis, these old Jewish style deli, which was ostensibly kosher. And he's a kid. I don't know how old he was, 15, 16. It was a summer job. One day the guy ran out of hot dogs, and he sent my father around the block to go get treif hot dogs. He said, my father said, how can I do this? He said, I need to sell hot dogs now. So we went, just this time only. So my father left. Couldn't do it. Right? It was the end of the job. But you see, but this guy, if nobody knew about it, and my father, when he hired onto the job, he assumed like everybody else, this guy who had no supervision and was probably open on Shabbos was also probably kosher. But when you have those challenges, and it's either selling non-kosher hot dogs or selling no hot dogs, you kind of get pushed. That's one issue. The second issue is how knowledgeable are you about looking at what the ingredients are. To understand food today, you need to be a food chemist. You need to know what's going on inside the ingredients. Mashgiachim can do that because they specialize in that. So that's why you need to have an organization that is watching this. That's why you need to have an Otzer Beit Din as well to make sure everybody stays honest. So if you invite me to your house, I eat in your house. If you have a store and I don't know, and you're running a business and you're making a profit and times are tough, I would trust you. But I would say you'd be more trustworthy if you had a mashgiach coming in. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So therefore,
Like Metro doesn't have a mashgiach, right?
I don't know what's a metro.
I asked.
What do you mean they don't have a mashgiach?
They don't have somebody looking up for the kosher product.
But the kosher product's a package.
No, like that's true. That's true.
Only Sobi has. Nobody else has.
Sobi has
Only Sobi has.
Everything is coming in pre-packed. Everything is coming in pre-packed. I don't know what's in Metro. Everything is coming in
pre-packed. Sobies? They have somebody walking around.
Because they have kitchens.
Metro, you have to be more careful about going through. Sobi's a little easier because there's a mashgiach going up and down the aisles and making sure.
No, Sobi, they cut the chicken, they do everything, they do there.
Sobi has a chicken.
They're a complete kosher place.
They are cooking there. They need a mashgiach.
Oh, I see.
So I'll give you where it comes up. It comes up. We have a situation up at the No Frills, in the No Frills on Thornhill, with the bagels. I don't know if people know. You know about this.
No.
So the No Frills sells off bakery products. They have packaged bakery products. They have fresh bakery products. However, and the fresh bakery products are not on their hashgacha. It's coming out of where it's coming from. It's coming their own bakery. It's in no supervision. However, the bagels that they sell are only Bubby's bagels. Bubby's Bagels drops off the bagels, and they sell Bubby's Bagels. So the question comes up, and you can ask people in Thornhill, they'll tell you two different versions. That the bagels that you buy, can you rely upon it's really Bubby's Bagels?
Yeah.
It's open. They're open bagels. You put them in your own bag. So, and I actually went. So I asked I once asked the COR, and they said yes, you could, because people would have to go really out of their way to kind of put a bagel in, because that's the only bagel that comes in. We know the bagel is coming. The bagel.
They're in the bag. You don't.
It's not in a bag. No, it's not in a bag. No, they're loose. They're loose.
There's no other loose bagels.
There's no bagels. There's no loose bagels. The only loose bagels are going to sell.
Someone has to be up to no good.
Right.
They have a good bagel.
Very good.
Yes, they do.
Where is it?
No frills on center.
I know where is it, but we see where they put the
Where they put together with the rest of the loose breads and rolls they get. I don't know, because they want you to get a fresh bagel. Because if you put them in a bag, then you can only buy 6 bagels, a dozen bagels. You want to buy 3 bagels.
No, but Bubi's bagels are distinctive.
Yeah, that's what I actually asked the COR, and that's what they told me. They said, yeah, you really can rely upon it. We can't say this publicly, but you can rely upon it. I still find it difficult.
Better too.
Right. In other words, and they actually write it's kosher bagels. They can't say it's kosher COR bagels, because once it's out of the bag, it's no longer COR. COR doesn't supervise, but it can be sold there. So there's an example. But I'm saying that there is no mashgiach there in that area. Anyways, back to the ranch. Let's come back to Osir Basin. Consequently, when the consumer picks up his food from a basin distribution point or from an authorized grocer, he isn't paying for the food as a consumer, rather he's simply reimbursing the basin for making the owner's fruits or shemitah accessible to him. Our farmer has thus been transformed with this arrangement from a purveyor of fruits forbidden by the Torah during shemitah to a common laborer earning a wage for his labor, which is permitted during shemitah. So he's being compensated. People being compensated. It's a different type of rate. It's a different kind of rate which is being put to that. By the way, you want to know what does it mean to have fruit that has kedusha? In contrast to fruit grown on land owned by non-Jews, the fruit acquired through an otzar beit and retains the holiness of shemitah must be handled with special care. Scraps and peels may not be disposed of, because scraps and peels usually have some edibles on them. Rather, until they become fully rotten, and may be eaten by those who observe shemitah. However, they may not be taken out of Israel out of the Torah delineated boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. So they can't just throw them out. Usually, when it means special handled by special care, they wrap them in plastic, so they keep them separate from the rest of the garbage.
Why not
have
a
separate recycling. Right.
Why do not allow to take off the Eretz Yisrael?
You can't take kedusha Yisrael produce outside of Israel. You can't take fruit with kedushas of shvius, which has a special kedusha in a holy land outside of the holy land. That's the deterioration, that's the degradation of the kedusha to take to a land that has two masagoyim. Because the lands outside of Israel, only the Shemitah year. Only the Shemitah year.
I don't understand this. Scraps and peels may not be disposed of unless they have become fully rotten and may be eaten by those.
It may not be eaten. Should be disposed. It may not be.
Who's going to eat the garbage?
The answer is.
That's a definition of how rotten it is, if it's possible. If someone is very hungry, he sees an apple peel or an apple core. Okay, I'm really hungry. I'm going to have it. But if it's spoiled, then I'm not going to. And then you can.
You know what? I don't know. Look, I peel an orange. I don't say try this at home. I peel an orange. Sometimes I finish the orange and still hungry. I'll eat the peel.
Yeah,
eat the peel too.
The rind. Same thing. You can peel an apple. You can peel maybe a cucumber.
Yeah.
So you can still eat the peel. The peel is edible. It's got to be something that's really unedible.
There's lots of nutrients.
There's lots of nutrients. Correct.
Does the produce end up being cheaper during the year?
Sure.
I think so.
Because there's no profit.
Right. It's really said as a makeup not to take a loss. But what it enables to do is to make sure that the farmer keeps being in business. Because the moment you turn a farm down, you stop working it. It's much more difficult to start up. And it allows the fields to be able to be used to some capacity. I mean, you travel around, you see there are fields on Shemitah which are not worked, right? Because they're keeping a very strict Shemitah.
So what do you do? So much produce going out of Israel.
So
not the produce going out of Israel. That's a date.
I can't hear you.
A lot of product going out of Israel.
Right. So how do they do that with Shemitah produce? I don't know if they do. I don't know if they can halachically. I don't know, for example, sometimes they get avocados, you get citrus fruits come out of Eretz Yisrael.
Figs, dates, mangoes.
Yeah, but I don't know if you can actually do that on a Shemitah produce unless it's coming from the parts of Israel that are not Israel. For example, in the Negev, parts of the Negev are clearly not Israel. How does it clearly not? Is it clearly not part of biblical Israel with the Kedusha of Shemitah? So those,
2 years ago, I was in Israel. I was in the Jordan, the river there, near some place, and the guy was producing date.
Yeah.
I asked him, I said, if I don't supply this year, for I obligated for last year, I close my.
Correct. I don't know what they do. I don't know. There may be parts that are not necessarily part of Kedusha Eretz Yisrael. The fact that something is geographically nationally part of Israel today does not mean it's part of biblical Israel. Remember, the only parts that we talked about, we once talked about the Kedusha, it goes back to Kibush Sheni, which is much smaller than the Kibush Rishon. So Kibush Sheni really is a much more circumspect area. So very far down south and very far down up north, there's not going to be Kedusha Eretz Yisrael.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So in the beginning here, when you said the first solution, right?
The first solution is about selling, about Mechira.
About buying product grown by a non-Jew.
About selling the land, correct.
But land will be, so it doesn't make a distinction between a land that was always owned by non-Jews,
yes,
and the land that was maybe sold now for Shemitah purpose.
It does not make a difference. That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So there must be a difference. I mean,
the difference is if it's owned by a Jew, if it's owned by a non-Jew, I didn't sell the land to the non-Jew. Question whether I can even sell a land to a non-Jew.
No, but before that, you said if the product is any good, if it was grown by a non-Jew in a non-Jewish
when they would sell it back,
land, non-Jew owned land.
This mean here?
The first question, what was the first question? If I can use the product, if it was grown by, it's from a land that is not
owned by a non-Jew, correct?
Right.
That's correct.
So it depends now. Is it owned by a non-Jew? Is it has always been owned by a non-Jew, or was just sold?
So there are two separate issues. One issue is whether I can sell that produce, and the second is whether the produce has kedusha.
Right.
So in the Otzer Beitin, I'm not selling the produce, but the produce still has kedusha.
Still has kedusha, even though that land always belonged to.
Right. So what used to be with the Het Mechira, they used to have like the Arabs would bring in their materials, their produce, and they would sell it. They would sell in Meisharim. They would sell in Bnei Brak.
Right.
The Arabs were selling it, buying from an Arab. So the question whether that produce even has kedusha shvius or not, that's a separate question than whether they can sell it. It's their produce, so they're selling it. I'm not stopping the Arab from selling it. I'm just saying, when I sell it in my store, I'm acting as an agent for the Arab. But if I sell my land, I'm a kibbutznik. I have a kibbutz, a moshav. I have land. I can't sell the land to an Arab. That's the question, whether I can sell the land.
What about the secular Jew?
But if
who
you
doesn't
did
believe in
already.
anything and wants to...
So the secular Jew is not going to keep the laws of Shemitah like he doesn't keep the laws of Shabbat, like he doesn't keep the laws of kosher. Okay?
How do you get his stuff?
How do you get his stuff?
Is this stuff kosher?
So then you would not be buying his stuff on the Shemitah year. It would delineate where you're going to buy the stuff from.
Stay away from it.
Right.
What, they will
Far
put a
away.
sign there?
In the same way,
You only go to those who sign.
the same way like kosher. Forget kosher Pesach. You think about you go to Jerusalem, you go to major cities, and then, all the restaurants are kosher. All the restaurants are kosher in the tourist areas. You leave the major centers, and you'll find that most stuff is not kosher. Unfortunately, you have to look for places that are kosher, that are closed on Shabbat, that want to be kosher, to stay kosher. Now, there's going to be a minority. That's just what it is. For me, it was a shock. I was traveling once with a group, and we stopped at a rest stop. A bus needed to use the bathroom. And you go there, there's a rest stop, there's a restaurant, a little boondock, and it's the guy's strafe. No, it's strafe.
Yeah.
You can't buy it like going to a rest stop here on the thruway or on the highway. It's the same thing. You say, well, where's the kosher stuff? There is no kosher stuff. It's one little rinky-dink thing, like a rinky-dink little rest stop. So you have to realize it's a very large land. This goes back to what we did with even Bar Smecha. These are secular Zionist people who are very good-meaning people, do a lot of chesed, great people, but they're not committed to keeping the mitzvah. Maybe they even have a Friday night dinner. Right? Maybe they do certain things. The Yom Kippur is a quiet day in Tel Aviv. Right? You can go roller skating, bicycling, on all the streets, but it's not Yom Kippur. I mean, it is Yom Kippur, but they're not sure. Sorry?
somebody he was doing Kiddush with the
Yes,
whole
they
family from on Skype.
Right. They showed actually these were the workers. They showed the workers at one point who were working on the railway. I don't know when they posted this. Who were working on the railroad from Tel Aviv to Yerushalayim, and they stopped for Kiddush. And they filmed it. The guy's doing it. He's reading it. I don't think he was on Skype. He was reading the Kiddush from his phone. Now the truth is, many Sfaradim, and I say the Tovah, are very traditional. So even if they don't keep full Shabbat, they still understand what Shabbat is. They respect Shabbat. So you could look at that video as pro and con. Can you imagine that he's reading the Kiddush off the phone, or can you imagine that he wants to say Kiddush even though he's using a phone? So, but that's what it was. They all had set up table. You can see it was set up for Shabbat, and the guy gets up there with his phone to read the Kiddush and say the Kiddush, and they all say Amen and drink and so forth. Anyways, I thought we would do this just gives you a bit of an approach to what it was, because when we talk, please keep it. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Speaking of Eretz Yisrael, this is the temperature.
Yeah, it's impossible.
What's that?
Where's this, Tel Aviv or
I think this was in
Migdal Emek?
114?
Yeah.
How much is Celsius?
Who sent it? What is the Celsius? Like 47? I assume it's like
How much is Celsius?
Begat Yedin.
How much is Celsius?
Like 42, 43, 44.
I don't know. No, it doesn't.
No, it's a.
Mass Celsius.
For sure, it's 44,
44.
Yeah, somewhere for sure.
How much is Fahrenheit?
114.
Just like that now. What's going to be in July, August?
No. This is just a heat wave.
Yeah.
It's the worst heat wave they've ever had. Okay. All right, so it's 1:15, so I'll tell you what we should do. I think we should do a little bit, and then we'll take our break, and then we'll come back and finish what we're going to do now. Okay, this is a piece from Nesivos Shalom. Okay, how's that?
Okay.
So here we go. This is from BeHar. It's a long piece. We're not going to do all of it. Okay.
Yeah.
What page? They don't have one layout. There's more. Yeah. What page am I starting? Kuf and.
Here, one more.
Okay, here we go. One more. Kuf and Zayin.
One more.
Okay. Halavai, when people come, we'll give it to them. Kuf and Zayin. Okay. First page you have. What can't be?
This is a parsha. This is Shabbat.
6.
No, it's
How
not
much is?
No.
How much?
14.
40.
You take
It's
32.
about 47. It's about
No,
46,
but just
47.
115 equals 115 Fahrenheit equals how much in Celsius?
You subtract 32, you multiply by
116,
5,
so
and you divide by 9.
How many Jews does it take to calculate?
Okay, so it's very
45, yeah, 45.
45.
I was right.
45.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it could get higher than that.
Could be. But where is it?
So the high in Migdal Emek is supposed to be 108. Right now it's
I don't know.
9.
I didn't say, but
But you didn't know where it
Beit
is.
or something
The
like
Chama is the regular. It's nothing. 45 is the
Good day for
regular.
La Playa.
Okay, back at the ranch. Here we go. Okay, so this is a piece about Shemitah. It's a long piece about Shemitah. Some of it, we'll do some of it and talk about some of it. We mentioned this the other day that when the mitzvah of Shemitah, the reason for Shemitah is really about Amunah, about belief in Hashem. And that's
Big one. It's not
big Amunah
very-
Hashem, and that's what he tries to develop here. Why it's so important. So if you look on page Kuf Tet Zayin, on the right column, on the bottom half of the page, he quotes the psukim from the Chumash, Vayidabeshem Moshe Bar Sinai Leimor, Deber Bnei Yisrael V'marta Alehem, Ki tavo el haaretz asher ani noten lechem shavtar Shabbat Lashem. So introducing, in the beginning of Parshat BeHar, it says two things, that God spoke to Moshe at Har Sinai, and he talked about the Shemitah. So Rashi says, "Manyan Shemitah Itzel Har Sinai, v'lo kol mitzvot nemru b'Har Sinai." All the mitzvot were Ma Shemitah nemru klalatel u'partel v'dikdukem miSinai. Av kulam nemru klalatel v'dikdukem miSinai. The same way the Shemitah, they mentioned the major rules and the specific details, and all the pieces about it were mentioned in Sinai. So everything was mentioned in Sinai. What Rashi did not explain is why specifically, if you want to choose one mitzvah, why choose mitzvah of Shemitah?
Because it's difficult for to do it. That's
So
one reason.
yes, but he doesn't say because it's difficult. He says because it's really about Amunah.
Because Shabbat cannot eat, but you can all the year you can not produce nothing. Give Hashem for 3 years. How? From where you will survive?
Okay.
It is not easy for say, okay. I mean, it's very, very big emunah.
Correct.
That's the reason he says it from
what he's not going to stress the difficulty, even though that's the flip side. He's going to stress the concept of a mitzvah means that to doing mitzvot for Hashem in general means emunah. All mitzvot, all the whole system of doing the Torah is based upon a belief in Hashem.
Yeah, Rabbi, this kibbutz avahem, we don't need for that the Torah. If after hakamocha, we don't need. This is
Shabbat I do need.
Shabbat.
Kashrut I need.
But it's not so difficult.
Okay. Shabbat is actually very difficult.
No, not difficult. You don't work one day. Big deal.
Well, if you don't come in on Saturday, don't come in on Monday.
Do you know how difficult? I mean,
in an ancient world,
look at how many Jews don't keep Shabbat. Because if it was easy.
I mean, you don't realize you work in a society where everybody is open 6 days a week. We work in a society where everybody's open 5 days a week, so it's easier for us. I once had a situation where I think I once mentioned to you, I had a situation with a person who began keeping Shabbat. I don't know if I discussed the story ever here.
No.
And he, maybe not. Maybe yes. Stop me if I did. Person who I was very close to, who actually lived about 2 hours out of New York City. He lived in New Jersey. And he started keeping the mitzvot and so forth and so on. And he came to me once, he says he wants to keep Shabbat. But there's one problem. He works in the stock exchange. He works not in the stock exchange, he works for a brokerage firm. And he can't leave New York. The stock exchange closes at 3 or 3:30. And he can't get on the bus before 3:30. And the early Fridays, he'll be on the bus when his Shabbos comes in. I didn't tell you the story?
No, especially if it's winter.
Okay, and then winter. So what can he do? So I spoke to a big God, spoke to Avgadai Schwartz in Chicago at that point. And he says, I can't leave early. I'll lose my job. If I leave at 2:30, he wasn't like the most dynamic guy in the world. He said, if I leave at 2:30 or 2 o'clock every Friday, I'm out. They don't need me. He says, but I want to keep Shabbat as much as I can. So we came up with the following system, that he was going to take no money with him on Shabbat, on Friday. The only thing he would have with him was his card, his Metro card, and a card for the bus. And when he would get on the bus on Friday, he took nothing with him, left everything in the office, no wallet, no nothing. He had the card, he put the card in his shoe.
Okay.
He stayed on the bus, and then he stayed on the bus. The driver is driving for 50 people on the bus. He's not driving for him. The driver is not really opening the door for him. When he got off at his stop in New Jersey, he got off, and he walked the remaining 2 miles to get home. That's what he did. Okay, this is what he did. And he did this like for about, I don't know, a year or 2, 3 years. And then, and I hadn't heard from him. We had moved away, and he just called me because he didn't know what to do. I get a panic call from him it's a few days before Pesach. And the guy calls me crazy. So I have to speak to you. He says there's been cutbacks in the industry. The firm, and it was a major firm, the firm is letting people go, and they just now canceled all vacations. They canceled all leaves. And people who were supposed to leave on a honeymoon and a vacation, they have to come to work. Everybody was called back. I said, what's the problem? He says, I booked to take off for Pesach. I booked to take off for Pesach. To take off for Pesach. Pesach is coming up. He's got 2 days at the beginning, 2 days at the end. And now I can't. So I said to him, well, wait. What'd you do last Pesach? What'd you do last Sukkot? So why don't you just go and tell your boss, you know that I've been taking off Pesach and Sukkot and Shavuos, all this, because he's been keeping the Shabbat for a number of years. Why don't you just tell him this is not something new? So he says to me, I have a confession to make. He says, when I spoke with you, I decided to keep Shabbat. Because you gave me the way to do it, get on the bus, I didn't have to leave work early, but I never took off for the Chagim. Chagim I went in, Shabbat I kept Shabbat, Chagim I always went in. I suddenly decided in the last few months I want to keep Pesach. This is the first time that I've decided to take off for Pesach. It's a really true story. It's an unbelievable story. So what do I do? What should I do? So because the boss has now called me and says you can't take off. Everybody, all the vacations are canceled. I don't know what to say to them. So I said to them what the truth was. I said, well, you have to go back and tell your boss that you have to take off. you decided that, it's true, last 6 months ago you didn't take off, but this became an important value for you, you decide to do it, and you're going to take off, and whatever will happen, will happen. And honestly, I got off the phone and I said to myself, haha, easy for me to say so, right? And I was kind of waiting for him. I didn't know. I figured he'd walk in the next day, and the next day was like Erev Pesach. So this is called like 2 days before the next day's Erev Pesach. I waited for him to call me to hear what happened, because I was too chicken to call him. He didn't call me. I didn't care for him at all. I figured the guy's lost the job. So I called him when Yontif was over. I really waited for the last minute. I just didn't have the strength to call him. I called him at the end of Yontif, the first 2 days. I said, what happened, Louis? What happened? He said he went into the boss and he told me he has to take off these 2 days because they're religious holidays, and he's committed to it. And the boss said to him like this, if this is so important for you, you can take off the 2 days. It's an amazing story. It's an amazing story. But the point of what I'm trying to say is that you talk about Shabbat being easy to take off. First, for this guy, it wasn't so easy, but he figured a way out to get off Friday, because in the shoot, he worked it out. But Yontif, which impeded upon his schedule, for 2 years he was going in for Yontif. He never asked for it. He didn't have the gumption. And the push came to shove, he found the strength, but that's very difficult. So don't say that Shemitah is an issue about Emunah, and Shabbos is not. Shabbos is extremely difficult. It happens every week.
My own experience. Everybody thinks it's very hard to keep Shabbos. After you start keeping Shabbos, you say, well, it's not so hard at all. Right?
But
that's the difference. Like somebody who was never Mechal Shabbos, right? They can't understand this.
Why did Jews go into the Shmata business?
That's the reason. They used to they started off working a job until it came to Shabbos.
They got jumped out. They became peddlers. Jews became peddlers, schlepping around. Unless they were self-employed, they had to work Shabbat. You couldn't get a job in the 1920s. All these immigrants.
Secular Jews think that keeping Shabbos is impossible. Take a day off. After you do it, it's not so hard at all.
You lose your job. Don't say it's not so hard. You and I live. You come from a different. Nowadays, I'm talking about the early 20th century.
Nowadays.
Yeah.
What's the part of the Shabbos?
This was
Maybe Shemitah is the same.
hashgacha pratis to the umpteenth degree of what happened.
Yes.
This is, and I guess you got to live your life like that.
Well, this guy was not the strongest, most charismatic kind of guy. He's a pretty nebby kind of guy. I didn't think he could do it.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell him any differently. It was easy for me to say to him, "Go tell the boss you can't work." But I like my phone dropped when I said to him, Louis, we spoke about 2 years ago about Shabbat. What have you been doing since then? So he says silence. He says, I have to tell you, I did Shabbat, but Yontif, I still went into work. He was taking off Shabbat. He was working Shabbat. He was working how to get home without carrying. And Yontif, he couldn't do it. Anyways.
Amazing.
So that's an amazing story. It's a true story, really true story. Anyways, okay.
I've had Marcus told the story that he was in Israel, and big sign. Closed homeways, open young people. You figure out what it was. The grandfather who started up the establishment to start from. And he says, I know my kids for sure will be closed in the Yontif. But homeway, I wasn't sure. In the star, it had to be closed.
Oh my goodness. But the kids were not, by the third generation they were not. Okay. Anyway, so the question is, just for guys who are walking in now, we're really discussing this piece here about why is it that that introducing Bahar, which is Bahar Sinai, mentions Shemitah. And the answer we're going to see is because the idea of Shemitah is really about Emunah and Hashem. Of all the mitzvot which talk about belief in Hashem, all the commitment to Torah is about trusting in the Almighty. But every mitzvah is not as complex and not as really trusting in the Almighty as closing down your farm for a whole year. And that's what Shemitah is all about. So that's the introduction on page Kuf Tet Zayin. Let's go to the answer. Excuse me, on the next page, Kuf Yud Zayin. And we said we would take a break for just 5 minutes and when we get to the halfway point, because my voice won't make it otherwise. So let's do one paragraph and then we'll kind of take a break and continue afterwards. V'yavuar, Kuf Yud Zayin, the second side on the right column. V'yavur pima shama chazal Moshe kibbutz Torah miSinai. He says you're going to explain it based upon what it says in Pirkei Avot, in listing the historiography of the Torah. It says Moshe received the Torah from Sinai. So the question is, very famous question is asked, why say Moshe got the Torah at Sinai and gave it to Yeshua? Moshe didn't get the Torah from Sinai, got the Torah from where? From God. Moshe got the Torah from God, gave it to Yeshua, Yeshua gave it to the elders gave it to the Nevi'im gave it to the Zikaim, and so forth. So why me Sinai? It goes for a stand, the receiving at Sinai, which is the Nei HaYesod L'chol HaTorah Mitzvot Hu Inyan HaEmunah, the basis for all the Torah. The basis for all the mitzvot that took place at Sinai is Emunah. Why? Shezoitah Dibra Rishonah Me'aseret Dibrot Shenemar Yisrael. The first of the 10 commandments, which was said to the Jewish people, was Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I'm the Lord your God, who took you out of Egypt. And the Rambam says, what's the mitzvah of Anochi Hashem Elokecha? What's the mitzvah that I am the Lord your God? What does it mean? What do you do? I am the Lord your God. So the Rambam says, Mitzvah Anochi Hashem Elokecha is a mitzvah of Emunat Hashem. So the introduction to the 10 Commandments is a mitzvah to believe in Hashem, to trust in Hashem. The preparation for receiving the Torah, the 10 Commandments and everything, was what took place at Sinai. The revelation, that the high revelation that was the clarity of Emunah, which took place at Sinai, as it says, you saw, you were given to understand that a God is Elokim and there's none beside him. All the 7 heavens were open. There's nothing besides the Almighty. There's no other God besides God. As it says, so the Emunah in the God was complete and total, so much so that it took us out of this world. Until their souls flitted away. And it says, and that's what Emun is. Sheyesh emunat hamoach shemevin misichlo emunat Hashem. That this is, you have emunah in your mind. Your mind is so completely taken over by belief in Hashem. That's a high level of emunah. So writes in the Nesivos Shalom, there are 3 levels of emunah. There's emunat hamoach, that I know in my mind that they're believing Hashem. Yesh emunat halev, there's the emunah of the heart, which is even in my emotions, I feel the emunah. Then there's a 3rd level, I can have emunah in my heart, in my head, I can have emunah in my heart, but maybe my body doesn't really have emunah. When I come to do things, the body is slowing, the body stops. The highest level of emunah is therefore going to be bechinat emunat evarim, the emunah of the limbs of the body. Shishlemut emunah. Not only I know to have emunah, not only I feel emunah, but I do the emunah. Shagam evarav mamnim v'chadurim b'bechinat emunah. The limbs run and do with emunah. B'bechinat kol atzmozai tomar Hashem yikamocha. All my limbs say to Hashem, who is like you? Even my body, my acts are done with emunah. That's the highest level. And this is what takes place in Sinai. They said to believe in Hashem, emunah in Hashem, not just my mind, not just my heart, but everything I believe in Hashem. And this is bechinat zu shel emunat evorim ma'itachan ala kabbalat b'mid mamar Sinai. This is the total emunah, including my limbs, was done at Sinai. And therefore, once they gave that emunah, people began to tremble because they realized what they were signed up for. The Torah was given with fear and awe and shaking and trembling, because that's the body is now signing on. All of this was through the greatness of the revelation, the clarity of the emunah. Their bodies as well recognize there's nothing like him. And that's why it says Moshe kibbutz Torah miSinai. Moshe didn't get the Torah from Hashem, he got the Torah at Sinai. The Torah which Moshe got was about a complete and total commitment to the emunah of the evarim, of the bodies, of the completeness of the body, where they stood at the foot of Sinai, and Moshe brought that to them. And when a Jew goes to do Torah or mitzvah, he's got to have the clarity of emunah until even his body is going to do it. Etc., etc., etc. Okay. Therefore, what does he say? We'll take a break just for a minute. But what does he say now? He's about to say, therefore, that the mitzvah of Shemitah is a mitzvah that has emunah. Not only am I thinking emunah, not only am I feeling emunah, I got to do emunah. I got to close down the farm. I got to let everybody in. I can't work. Everybody's got right to my produce. So the mitzvah, if Torah and mitzvahs is about complete emunah in the moach, emunah in the heart, emunah in the body, this is all together in the mitzvah of Shemitah. And that's why in introducing Shemitah, it says, where did it take place? At Har Sinai. 5-minute break. Don't go too far.
Can I share something with you guys?
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Moshe, you should hear this.
I'm listening. I'm not going anywhere.
So I had an event at my house last night for an organization called Jewish Youth Network. Yep. I had several Orthodox rabbis there, and I was home all day helping out. I had some very deep discussions. These are very learned men, been around, and we discussed a lot of things. Two things amongst us. We discussed was Eim Habanim Smecha, and then we discussed the 49,000 years and how perhaps each day represents and each week and all this kind of stuff. And I will tell you, and this is why, and it made me think, that, we follow the Rashis and we follow the Rambams and we follow these amazing, brilliant sages. We also need to vet it ourselves, and we need to think about what we read and what we study. Why? Because I had these two gentlemen completely disagree with that we should be in Eretz Yisrael today, that one of them completely believes that we should wait for the Mashiach, loves what's going on in Israel, loves it, thinks it's amazing, but doesn't believe that we should leave Galut until the Mashiach comes. There's one. And as far as the 49,000 years, the other one says to me, Jeff, if it was 49,000 years, it couldn't be. It has to be 24-hour days. There are 7 days. The 7th day is the day we rest. Or there'd be 1,000 years or 7,000 years between us. Okay. So he believes it's 24 hours a day, and we rest on the 7th day. Okay. There is no 49,000 years. Okay. It's 24 years. Hashem made Adam as a man, as an adult, and this universe was made as it is. With all the stars, he believes the Big Bang and all this is nothing. Hashem made the world as it is because Hashem could. We had a very, very deep debate about this. And so I'm just saying, guys, that
where's this going?
I'm saying that
only 24 hours.
If you have 10 Jews, you have 20 opinions. And we have to think for ourselves what the truth is. And we use these as guides. We use the Rambams as guides and the Rashis as guides.
100%. These are forums for discussion and to raise ideas.
So I'm saying that these guys had their own opinions. These were really bright men that I spoke to. And anyway, it was really interesting. It was really interesting. He thinks the whole Big Bang's hogwash. I said, and the dinosaurs, and all the fossils, and Neanderthal man, and all this stuff.
Well, he's entitled to opinion.
I'm just saying. Anyway, sorry. So I thought I'd share that with you. Sure. Because we study this, right? We study going.
Why are we here? You have to keep the mitzvot.
Why aren't we in Eretz Yisrael? Why are we punishing ourselves? We're spit out of every land in the world. Everywhere we go, we're spit out.
No. A lot of people drink.
Not true?
No, I don't think so.
At my house.
Did it take place before they drank the wine?
It was actually before, during, and after. So I spent like 3 hours before, during several hours. I had to mingle with the guests. We had 120 people there, and then after. And
that's good. Well, they're entitled to their opinion. Rabbi Tashkel's entitled to his opinion. Yeah. The bottom line is, keeping the mitzvot is really about emunah. No matter how you slice it, keeping the mitzvot is about emunah.
Yes, it is.
Yep. Right. Wherever you are and whenever you are and how many years you believe the world is here. But if you're not concerned about the Big Bang, then you can look at things differently, I suppose.
The example you give is the example of this. I assume this young man for his job.
Yeah.
Is emunah.
I agree.
He goes in there. He really does the right thing as a Jew.
Although you will speak to farmers and they'll tell you that keeping Shemitah is a practical solution to keeping the land healthy.
True.
Yeah. It's nothing to do with emunah. It's got to do with the land that is.
So the answer is yes, but if you look as farmers, they'll rotate the crops on different lands at different times. They're not going to shut down completely for a year.
No, they don't shut down completely.
Right. And then we had the Ramban who actually said that shutting down for a year is really meant as a blessing. If you were rotating crops, you'd be shutting down every other year.
Yes, right.
Right, you get 4 Shemitas per year, but keeping Shemitah is a real reduction. So I don't know what to tell you, Jeff, but everybody's entitled to their opinion. I'm glad you had these discussions, and
I thought I'd share it.
Yeah,
We talked about AM Abanim, right? Like we were speaking about this for quite a while.
So when
I took our side, but I took
Even he
Rob
acknowledged
Teichtel's
he had
side.
people against him.
correct.
What's that, Raphael?
Even
Rabbi,
he acknowledged.
correct.
So Teichtel announced.
Go for the location. That's why Shemitah would not be is not applicable here in the diaspora. You work 6 years and stop working the 7. Okay, so and therefore
When we're in the Chutz La'aretz, we can have the Emunah. Unfortunately.
yeah. Okay, so let's go back to this. So therefore he writes as follows: where are we up to? We're up to the bottom of Kuf Yotet. Okay, v'yesh lomar shenyan Shabbat aratzu kamo shekatuv Orach Chaim, like Dorach Chaim writes on Shabbat, shitachlit habriya v'chol kiyam habriya tolei b'Shabbos Kodesh. It's about the creation. The whole purpose of creation depends upon Shabbos. Ki HaKadosh Baruch Hu natan l'olam koach litkayem rak l'shisha yamim. God only made the world to have power for 6 days, to exist for 6 days. V'rak mikoach shmirat Shabbat mitchadeshet habriya le'od shisha yamim. Only because of the sanctity of Shabbat is the world renewed for 6 days. And he says the same thing for Shemitah. V'yaldad zeh yesh lo shegam mitzvah Shemitah eno rak mitzvah. It's not just a mitzvah, but ela kol kiyuma shel Eretz Yisrael tolui ba. The whole power, the whole existence of Israel depends upon the kedusha of Shemitah, the sense of sanctity, of validating the sanctity of Israel. Shakadosh Baruch Hu natan levnei Yisrael l'taretz rak mikaymu mitzvah Shemitah. The God gave the land to Israel only to keep the Shemitah. I know today people don't all keep Shemitah. This is the whole purpose of Israel, is about keeping the mitzvot and keeping Shemitah. Ki kol zchut hakiyum shalam Yisrael ba'aretz shenatan lam HaKadosh Baruch Hu hu kasher mekablim ritzon Hashem yitbarach. The only purpose of having the land of Israel is because God gave us the ability to follow His will there. Umaminim, to believe shu yitbarach manhigat olam, umaminim b'avtacho yitbarach, that God rules the world, and we trust in Hashem, and He'll give us the blessing. V'lo mistamchim al kol chiv yotzam yadi. Not just my power. My power is only a way to allow HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give us the emunah there. If we don't keep the Shemitah, it's a weakness in our belief. The ownership of the land is through God. It doesn't mean, once again, that we can't work with Otzar Beitin. Otzar Beitin is trying to find a mechanism to work within Shemitah. Heter Mechira was a mechanism within the idea of Shemitah. Keeping the lights on a timer in your house is a mechanism to work with Shabbat. Eating hot food on a chillet, on a crock pot, is a way to work with Shabbat. It's not denying Shabbat. It's using the laws of Shabbat to rely upon HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
As if you Otzar B'din, this means you are lack of emunah.
No, you're working with the system. You're working with the halachic valid system to kind of enable to take place. Because there's still a munah, because you're not making out the same thing. You're not making the same money. It allows the farmer to subsist. It's a way to pay him to ensure that he doesn't go under. In other words, the world, you're not supposed to sit back and say God will provide. I'm not supposed to sit back on Shabbat and say God make the lights go on. I don't say God, you know what? It's cold in here. You make it hot. I build a furnace that has an automatic thermostat, right? Or I use the systems to make things work for me. I put timers on my house. I set up a system. Shabbat works. I make sure things don't happen on Shabbat. It'll be Machalel Shabbat. But it doesn't mean that I have to be a primitive caveman on Shabbat. And the same thing for Shemitah. I don't have to be a primitive person with nothing to do. I have to use the mechanisms of Shemitah and the mechanisms of Beitin to make that Shemitah works for me. So but most of Israel today doesn't do that. That's what you asked before. Most of Israel, most of the Chilonim do not keep Shemitah, do not have Otzar Beitin, do not have Heter Mechira, do not keep kosher. But the purpose of Israel is to really be a land where we can keep the emunah. And Rav Teichtel says that too. All the Rav Teichtel lands is that the Jews, people who came to build the land, even though they were not committed to the mitzvot, at that point were playing a vital role. He believed eventually they will be brought back. If we go to Israel, if we, the religious, go to Israel, we will create an opportunity to bring them back to us. Instead, what has happened? We've gone there. It hasn't happened yet, but some of it's because we've put up barricades around our society. We've closed ourselves off. And they've closed themselves off.
Yeah, but does it really matter? During the days of Achav, they're committing they're following the idols,
And they were
yet they're blessed.
because they had unity, because they lived in the land and developed the land. Yes, so they're blessed. They live, but we haven't reached the ultimate because there are still boundaries between the different camps. So therefore, going to the next paragraph, Kol kiyum abriyahi b'koch u'munash Yisrael ma'amini b'Hashem yitbarach shekol b'yado, the middle of page Kuf Chaf on the right side. The whole existence of the world, the whole continued existence of the world, relies upon the amunah that the Jewish people have in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that everything is in His hand. V'lachen Shabbat kiyum klalit abriyah. Shabbat is therefore gives validity. We don't live in Israel, you're right, but we don't have Shemitah. V'chmo ken hakiyum she'yeshivat Yisrael hi Shabbat haaretz. The existence of Israel depends on the Shabbat of the land. And you have to remember, Nesivos Shalom, Rabbi Berezovsky, lived in Israel during the Second World War. He survived the Holocaust because he was the head of the yeshiva, the Chabad yeshiva, the Lubavitch yeshiva in Tel Aviv. And most of Slonim was destroyed. There was very little left over. But he was in Israel. He knew the hardships. He knew the difficulties. He knew the barriers that existed. And this is really hinted to sanctify God, to keep the Shabbat. Why the Torah introduces, remember the Shabbat, because Shabbat, the sanctity, keeps it. It's not just a mitzvah, it's the whole purpose of the creation and the root of its existence. The same Shabbat concept, the same way Shabbat keeps the Jews alive, so Shabbat keeps the land of Israel alive. Before listing the details, God gave the land of Israel to the Jews from all the different lands. Now, okay, there's one more piece I wanted to do here. Daled. So he says now there are two different types of Amunah. Okay, there are two subheadings of Amunah. Everything's about Amunah so far. What does belief mean? What do you mean belief? When I say Amunah, how do you translate it? I believe. What do I believe?
Trust.
Believe that God made the world.
I believe that God made the world. I believe that what?
Still continue.
The Almighty. Yeah. So he says there are actually two parts to Amunah. It's a two-way street. One is that I believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu controls the world, and is in charge of the world. It's number one. There's a second part of belief here. I believe that we are the chosen people. I believe that God has a special relationship with us. He says there are two. One, maybe the second is a subheading of the first. If I don't have the first, I can't have the second. But one is I believe that there is a universal God that controls everything, and God is the God of all mankind, all the world. And the second thing, I believe that we were chosen for some kind of special mission in this world to follow His Torah, because the Goyim don't have the Torah. Right? They also have a mission, but my mission is very unique that we are a chosen people. Chosen does not mean better. Chosen does not mean I'm superior than a non-Jew, but it means I have a special relationship with the Almighty. That relationship is founded based upon the mitzvot that I do through the first Amunah. Okay? So he writes in Dalet, I've got these two types of Amunah. There are two types. One Amunah is Amunah b'briata olam ha'idei HaKadosh Baruch Hu borei manhig. The first Amunah is I believe in God created and rules the world. Amunah b'malat ha'misol sh'yom ha'nevchar. And there's also Amunah, the second Amunah is that the Jewish people have a very unique relationship with the Almighty. The two types of Amunah are related to the following things, as follows. It says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God, which is Amunah. So Anochi Hashem is about God as a universal God. This is the Amunah on Hashem. And then it says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, your God. When I say the third one, I am the Lord, your God, I'm introducing the second part of that Amunah, which is, yes, I am God. There's one Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is being and was and will be and is and runs everything. But it's also Elokecha, there's a special relationship. So we are the Am Nivchar, we're the chosen people. That is also a high level of Amunah. Okay? If you want to understand how he says, how to ensure, this goes back to maybe what Jeff was asking, how do you help make sure that your Amunah gets stronger? It's not only by believing in Hashem, it's by believing that I have a special mission in life as well. So I'm going to move down to 2/4, and say left column, and counting lines down to the 7th line. Shalacha v'amijaches alecha shincha ben la'am nevchar. You are a son to the chosen people. Zui madrika gva b'yoter b'emunah. This is the highest level of emunah. K'sher yeshu di'agasha zot shu ben la'am nevchar. When you realize that you are a part of the chosen people, this stops you from sinning. You know what your loss is. Those not only will I lose God can't be affected, but if I buy out of Judaism, I bail out of Judaism, I've lost the Elokecha, the special relation. And that which I said, I'm Lord God, which took you out of Egypt, and not God, Asher Barati et Olam. Why? The whole second part, coming out of Egypt, getting to Sinai, getting the Torah, relates to the second part of Amunah. So in other words, I got one Amunah, I'm the God who made the world. The second one is I'm the God who took you out of Egypt. Took you out of Egypt to get to Sinai. The first type of Amunah, he's going to connect this now to Shabbat and Shemitah. The first Amunah about God being a universal God that made a world and runs the world, that's Shabbat. The Shabbat of the weekly Shabbat. Every 6 days, everybody has some days of work, and once a week you got a Shabbat. Everybody had this. The Jews had it before Sinai. When God made the world. As it said, God made the world, the heavens and the earth in 6 days, rested on the seventh. So the first Shabbat, the first type of Shabbat, which is Shabbat of Shashish Mei Breshit, the 6 days of creation, and the day of Shabbat, which we have in 2 days, the weekly Shabbat is remembering God as universal God who runs the world. The second Shabbat, and this Shabbat was before they got to Sinai. The second Shabbat, or the second type of Amunah, which takes place when the Jewish people get to Sinai, and God is their God, who took them out of Egypt, and they're the chosen people. It says, Anoch Hashem Elokecha, your God, Asher Hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. God is revealing to this. This is the second type of Shabbat, and what's he going to connect that to? He's going to connect that to the Shabbat of Shemitah. That's really what he's trying to say. Yeah. What Rabbi Fishman said with the 2 Shabbats we have to keep is the 2. He doesn't say them have to keep. He's talking about the 2 Shabbats in the world. But they're both Shabbat because the Shabbat of the 6-day creation, the weekly Shabbat, is universal Shabbat. Right? Every nation that we know has a 7-day week. They may not rest on the 7th day. They may take Sunday, but they have a 7-day week. The idea of a day, a year of rest, is something uniquely for Jewish people. Why? Because we're the Am Nivchar, living in the land that's Nivchar. And then the next piece, he says the same thing really. In the next paragraph, he tries the same thing with Shemitah and Yovel. He says maybe Shemitah is really more like Shabbat, the universal Shabbat, and Shemitah is more for the Jewish people. But I'm not really sure I can really understand it fully. But this is where the key, and therefore, while we were down where we were, God took us out. So coming out of Mitzrayim is really the second level of which is receiving the Torah, which is really about the second Shabbat is. That's the key to this Nesivos Shalom. So in other words, yes, we have to work on our Emunah. And yes, and what Yeres speaking to Yeres here. Okay, I got to work on my Emunah. But the way to help me work on my Emunah is recognizing that I have a gift, I have a special relationship with that Emunah. And if I forget that, it's easy to crack my Emunah. If I remember that there's something unique, not just about me, but about the Jewish people, not that I'm better, but I got a special mission in life, then I realize I got to make that mission worthwhile to keep my Emunah.
You as an individual part of the Jewish people.
Me as a son, as a child of the Jewish people, as a member of the Jewish faith community. That's the key. That's really the key to this. So you go back to those rabbis and tell them you learned the second type of Emunah.
I was actually given homework last night. The homework was, Jeff, find out the difference from Ani. The first one was, what's the difference between Ani Hashem, Ani Hashem Elokecha? Right?
Now you go back, there you go.
They did that today.
For sure.
Isn't that unbelievable?